For millennia, the Earth has held countless secrets beneath its surface. Forgotten cities swallowed by time, strange artifacts crafted by hands long gone, and monuments that baffle even the greatest minds of our era. These are not just remnants of the past. They are whispers of civilizations whose knowledge and purpose remain a mystery. Despite all our advances in archaeology and science, some puzzles refuse to yield their answers. They stand as silent guardians of truths we have yet to uncover. In the next 3 hours, we will journey through the most perplexing archaeological mysteries, enigmas that challenge what we think we know about human history, technology, and the limits of ancient knowledge. From unexplained structures to cryptic artifacts, from vanished cultures to forbidden places, these stories blur the line between fact and legend. So, prepare yourself to dive deep into a world where history's greatest questions still linger, where every discovery raises more questions than answers, and where the past is stranger than fiction. This is not just a story about what we have found, but about what remains hidden. Hidden in the misty highlands of Laos stretches one of Southeast Asia's most perplexing archaeological enigmas, the Plain of Jars. For centuries, vast fields scattered with thousands of massive stone jars have puzzled explorers and scholars alike, their origins, purpose, and creators shrouded in mystery. These enigmatic megaliths, some weighing several tons and standing up to 3 meters tall, dominate the landscape in clusters that spread across a rugged plateau, defying easy explanation. Unlike the more famous ancient sites built with clear religious or defensive purposes, the Plain of Jars raises questions that echo unanswered through the ages. Who carved these colossal vessels? Why were they placed here? And what secrets do they hold beneath their weathered surfaces? Discovered by the outside world in the early 20th century, the Plain of Jars quickly captured the imagination of archaeologists, intrigued by their sheer scale and the mystery surrounding their function. Unlike typical jars or containers used for storage, these stone jars are hollowed out from solid rock, often sandstone, with open tops and thick walls. Their construction reveals remarkable craftsmanship and an understanding of stoneworking techniques by a culture whose identity remains elusive. What makes them more enigmatic is their scattered arrangement. Thousands of jars spread over an area roughly the size of a small city, clustered unevenly in groups that suggest some form of organization, yet without clear roads, walls, or structures to explain their placement. Early theories about the jar's purpose ranged from mundane to fantastical. Some proposed they were used to store food or water, a practical solution for an ancient community in a challenging environment. Others suggested they were vessels for fermenting rice wine or for brewing traditional medicines. Yet none of these ideas fully explain the jar's size, weight, and scattered distribution across the plateau. Excavations have uncovered human remains and burial goods buried beneath and around some of the jars, supporting a hypothesis that they played a role in funerary rituals. The jars may have been urns or containers for cremated remains, or perhaps markers for graves, turning the plain into a vast ancient cemetery whose scale overwhelms modern understanding. Adding to the mystery are the occasional artifacts and pottery fragments found nearby, which date the jars roughly between 500 DCE and 500 CE. However, the lack of written records or inscriptions leaves the jar's creators anonymous, forcing archaeologists to piece together clues from the landscape, oral traditions, and the sparse artifacts scattered around the site. Local legends speak of giants who once roamed the land and used the jars to brew their rice wine, a mythological explanation that hints at the jar's monumental size and enduring presence in cultural memory. The sheer logistics of carving and transporting these massive stone vessels further deepen the mystery. Quarrying sandstone blocks, Hollowing them out with rudimentary tools and moving them across rugged terrain without the wheel or draft animals would have required immense effort, cooperation, and planning. What drove these ancient people to invest so much time and labor into creating such imposing monuments remains unclear. Was it religious devotion, social status, or a combination of both? The absence of definitive answers leaves room for speculation and wonder. In recent decades, modern technology has allowed archaeologists to explore the Plain of Jars with new eyes. Ground-penetrating radar and remote sensing have revealed hidden jars buried beneath the earth, suggesting the visible ones are only a fraction of the total site. Yet the full extent of the original layout of the site may never be known, as large parts of the plain remain hazardous due to unexploded ordnance left from decades of conflict during the 20th century. This tragic legacy has limited extensive excavation, preserving some of the mystery while complicating efforts to unravel the jar's secrets. The Plain of Jars is not just a collection of stones. It is a silent witness to a forgotten chapter of human history, a landscape where the boundaries between the natural and the cultural blur. The jars speak to us of a society capable of monumental effort and symbolic expression, yet lost to time. Their quiet presence invites us to reflect on the transient nature of civilizations and the enduring human desire to leave a mark on the earth. As the sun sets over the misty plains, the jars cast long shadows across the rugged terrain, shadows that seem to guard the stories etched in stone and silence. They challenge us to look beyond the surface, to listen for the echoes of rituals long ceased, and to embrace the mystery of a culture that shaped these monumental vessels without leaving a clear trace of its identity. The Plain of Jars remains a riddle carved in stone, a timeless puzzle that beckons the curious and defies the definitive.
Deep beneath the surface of Malta lies a hidden world carved by ancient hands, a subterranean labyrinth known as the Hypogeum of Hal Safleeni. This remarkable underground complex, dating back over 5,000 years, remains one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites ever discovered. Unlike the imposing pyramids of Egypt or the towering stone circles of Europe, the Hypogeum is a delicate maze of chambers and passageways hewn entirely from soft limestone, its walls etched with mysterious motifs, and its silent halls imbued with an eerie stillness that echoes the rituals of a vanished civilization. But what makes this site truly perplexing is not just its remarkable preservation or its architectural sophistication, but the many unanswered questions it raises about the people who built it and the purpose it once served. Discovered accidentally in 1902 during construction work, the Hypogeum quickly captivated scholars and explorers alike. Its 3 distinct levels, descending deep into the earth, reveal a complex world where the boundaries between life and death seem to blur. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of over 7,000 individuals, carefully interred within the chambers, alongside pottery, tools, and intricate red ochre paintings. Yet the Hypogeum is far more than a burial site. Some chambers resonate with extraordinary acoustic properties, producing sounds that seem to ripple and vibrate with an almost supernatural quality. Scientists have measured a resonance at frequencies that correspond with the human voice, suggesting the space may have been designed for ritualistic chanting or ceremonies intended to connect with otherworldly forces. The architecture itself defies simple explanation. The precision with which the chambers and corridors were carved from solid rock is astonishing, especially given the tools available to Neolithic builders. Smooth, flowing curves guide visitors through winding tunnels that open into large circular halls, all carefully constructed to support the weight of the earth above without collapsing. Some experts speculate that the Hypogeum represents an early example of sophisticated engineering and architectural knowledge, far beyond what would be expected for a society believed to be primarily agrarian and simple in their technology. Yet no written records exist to explain the builders' intentions, their beliefs, or the rituals performed within these depths. Adding to the mystery is the discovery of unusual burial practices. Bodies found within the Hypogeum were often placed in fetal positions, sometimes wrapped in organic materials now long decayed, and accompanied by grave goods that suggest a belief in an afterlife. Yet the sheer number of skeletons and the evidence of repeated use over centuries imply the Hypogeum was a sacred site, central to the spiritual life of the island's earliest inhabitants. Why such elaborate care was taken underground instead of in more conventional burial grounds remains unclear. Some propose that the Hypogeum functioned as a portal, a liminal space between worlds, while others argue it was a sanctuary for the elite or a communal tomb that unified diverse clans. Scientific analysis has only deepened the mystery. Carbon dating places the Hypogeum's construction around 4000 to 2500 BCE, a time when Malta was a hub of emerging culture and trade in the Mediterranean. Yet no comparable underground necropolises exist in the region, making the Hypogeum a unique phenomenon. Furthermore, the artwork found within the chambers, spirals, circles, and abstract shapes painted in red ochre, resonate with symbolic meaning but resist interpretation. Are these primitive decorations, or did they serve a deeper spiritual purpose, encoding knowledge now lost to time? In recent decades, advanced imaging technology and 3D mapping have revealed previously unseen details of the Hypogeum structure, including hidden passageways and chambers that challenge prior assumptions about its layout and scale. Conservation efforts are ongoing, but visitor access is strictly limited to protect the fragile environment, adding to the sense of mystique that surrounds this subterranean wonder. The Hypogeum continues to inspire debate among archaeologists, historians, and even acousticians, each seeking to unlock the secrets buried within its walls. Beyond its physical mysteries, the Hypogeum of Hal Safleeni stirs something deeper in the human imagination. It reminds us that beneath the surface of what we know lies a vast expanse of the unknown. Places where ancient people grappled with life, death, and the cosmos in ways that remain elusive to us. The echoes of their footsteps, the faint traces of their rituals, and the artistry carved in stone speak across millennia, inviting us to question our understanding of civilization's origins and the forces that shaped human belief. As we step back from the shadows of the Hypogeum, we are left with a haunting truth. Some mysteries resist explanation not because we lack the tools to solve them, but because they touch on realms beyond ordinary understanding. The Hypogeum is more than an archaeological site. It is a portal to a forgotten world, a silent testament to the enduring human quest to find meaning in the darkness.
Scattered across the lush landscapes of Costa Rica lie hundreds of perfectly shaped stone spheres, some small enough to cradle in the palm of a hand, others so massive they weigh over 15 tons. Known simply as Las Bolas, these enigmatic relics of the pre-Columbian Tecaxic culture have baffled archaeologists and historians since their rediscovery in the 1930s. At first glance, they appear almost too perfect to be the work of an ancient society without modern tools. Their smooth, rounded surfaces gleam in the sunlight as if nature itself had shaped them. But these are no natural formations. Every sphere was carved by human hands centuries ago, and their purpose remains one of Central America's most enduring mysteries. The spheres vary greatly in size, from a few centimeters to more than 2 meters in diameter, yet many are astonishingly precise in their roundness. Such perfection is not easy to achieve even with modern equipment. The Tecaxic people, who flourished in the region from roughly 700 to 1530 CE, lacked metal tools, advanced machinery, or even the wheel. To shape these enormous rocks, often from hard materials like gabbro, a coarse-grained igneous stone, they would have had to hammer, chip, and grind them with painstaking care over years. The sheer labor involved raises an important question: why go to such extraordinary lengths? Their arrangement offers tantalizing hints, but no definitive answers. Archaeologists have documented spheres clustered in lines, triangles, and geometric patterns. Some align with the sun during solstices and equinoxes, suggesting a possible role in astronomy or calendrical systems. Others are found near the ruins of ancient settlements, perhaps serving as territorial markers or symbols of prestige. But the patterns are inconsistent, and without written records from the Tecaxic, their exact meaning remains speculative. It is possible that the spheres were both practical and symbolic, boundary markers infused with spiritual significance, or ritual objects that reinforced social and political power. Local legends, passed down through generations, weave their own explanations. Some say the spheres are the remnants of a giant's game, celestial marbles left behind after divine battles in the heavens. Others claim they contain gold or hidden treasures, a belief that tragically led to the destruction of many spheres by treasure hunters. When the United Fruit Company began clearing land for banana plantations in the early 20th century, workers encountered these massive stones and often blasted them apart, hoping to find riches inside. None were found, and countless artifacts were lost to greed and curiosity before serious archaeological work could begin. The surviving spheres have been studied extensively, yet they continued to resist complete understanding. Chemical analyses reveal that the stone was often transported from quarries many kilometers away, sometimes over rough terrain and dense rainforest. Without beasts of burden or wheeled carts, moving these colossal stones would have required organized labor, ingenious transport methods, and a deep commitment to the task. Some researchers believe the spheres may have been status symbols, their size reflecting the wealth or influence of the community that possessed them. Others suggest they had a spiritual function, serving as conduits between the human world and the cosmos. Even their chronology remains uncertain. While associated artifacts and settlement remains place many of the spheres within the height of the Tecaxic culture, it is possible that some were made earlier and reused over centuries. The Spanish conquest in the 16th century disrupted the society that created them, and knowledge of their original purpose may have vanished with the collapse of that culture. Today, only the silent stones remain, their meaning erased by time but preserved in form. Modern preservation efforts have restored some dignity to these relics. In 2014, the pre-Columbian chiefdom settlements with stone spheres of the Tecaxic were inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognizing their cultural significance and the need to protect them from further damage. The spheres now sit in fields, gardens, and museums, some in their original locations, others displaced long ago. Standing before one of these massive stones, it is easy to feel the weight not only of the rock itself, but of the mystery it carries, a tangible connection to a civilization that thrived in harmony with its land, shaping stone into symbols that transcended the practical. The stone spheres of Costa Rica are more than archaeological curiosities. They are messages from the past, written in perfect geometry, meant to endure beyond the lifespans of their makers. Perhaps they marked sacred spaces, commemorated great leaders, or mapped the movement of the heavens. Or perhaps their true purpose was something so deeply embedded in the Tecaxic worldview that it is now invisible to ours. As with so many ancient mysteries, their silence is part of their power. We may never know exactly why these spheres were made, but their presence still commands awe and respect. In the end, they remind us that human creativity is not bound by the limits of technology. With determination, vision, and collective effort, the Tecaxic shaped the raw, unyielding stone into something timeless, a legacy that rolls silently through the centuries, unbroken by the rise and fall of empires. The stone spheres stand as silent sentinels of a forgotten culture, their perfection an unspoken challenge to our understanding of the past.
Beneath the rolling hills of Zhejiang province in eastern China lies a hidden wonder so vast and intricate that it defies all conventional explanation. Known today as the Longyou Caves, this sprawling network of 24 hand-carved caverns was first revealed to the modern world in 1992, when local villagers, believing the water-filled depressions were bottomless ponds, decided to drain them. What emerged from beneath the surface stunned everyone. Immense subterranean chambers cut with geometric precision, rising to heights of 30 meters and stretching in vast, echoing spaces. It wasn't a natural formation, it was the work of human hands, and the scale of it was staggering. These weren't rough-hewn caves hacked crudely into the earth. Every wall, every pillar, every ceiling was smoothed and adorned with precise parallel chisel marks, as if the builders had followed a strict set of instructions. The stone is siltstone, a hard and durable material not easily shaped by ancient tools, yet here it was carved into monumental halls with unwavering uniformity. Covering over 30,000 square meters in total area, the Longyou Caves dwarf many other ancient underground structures. To create them, millions of cubic feet of rock would have had to be extracted, rock that has never been found in any nearby spoil heaps or quarries. Archaeologists quickly realized the implications. Without modern technology, the excavation of a single cave would have required hundreds of laborers working full-time for years. Multiply that by 24, and the logistics spiral into something resembling a national-scale project. Who organized this? Who financed it? And, most importantly, why? No written records from any known Chinese dynasty mention the Longyou Caves, despite the fact that their construction would have been monumental enough to warrant imperial recognition. Ancient China was meticulous in its record-keeping, yet these vast caverns are absent from every scroll and chronicle. Dating attempts suggest they may be over 2,000 years old, possibly from the late Warring States period or early Han Dynasty. But that period in Chinese history is well documented, making the silence surrounding the caves even stranger. Were they deliberately hidden from the historical record? Was their purpose secret, meant for the eyes of a select few? Or are we missing an entire chapter of history, one belonging to a culture that predates even the dynasties themselves? The cave's layouts only deepen the mystery. Each chamber is unique, with varying sizes, shapes, and arrangements of supporting pillars. Some connect to others, forming complex networks, while others stand isolated. There are signs of intentional design, patterns in the pillar placements, alcoves cut into the walls, and even small raised platforms that might have served as stages, thrones, or altars. But no tools, pottery shards, inscriptions, or human remains have been found inside. The builders left behind only their stonework, as if they finished the project and vanished without a trace. And then there are the chisel marks, thousands upon thousands of them, etched in a neat, repetitive pattern across every surface. They are so uniform in depth and spacing that some engineers have wondered if they served more than a purely functional purpose. Could they have been symbolic, decorative, or perhaps they were meant to aid in acoustics, diffusing echoes in the vast stone halls?
even with modern equipment. Replicating the same pattern so precisely over such a massive surface area would be a challenge. Theories abound. Some scholars suggest the Longyou caves were used as grain storage, the constant cool temperature preserving food for decades. Others argue they may have been underground temples or ceremonial complexes, their hidden nature lending them spiritual power. A more defensive interpretation sees them as military hideouts or garrisons, protected from siege and weather alike. More speculative ideas range from astronomical observatories to ancient flood shelters, or even something far stranger, remnants of a civilization advanced in ways we no longer understand. The rock removal alone raises staggering questions. Millions of cubic feet of siltstone had to be cut, hauled, and dumped somewhere. No traces of this debris have been identified in the surrounding landscape. Where did it go? Was it used to build something else, now lost? Or could the extraction have taken place over such a long period that the disposal sites simply disappeared into the folds of time? Today, the caves remain remarkably well preserved. Their ceilings haven't collapsed, their walls haven't crumbled, and the water that once filled them remains perfectly clear in certain areas, as if protected by some hidden filtration system. In over 2 millennia, they have survived earthquakes, floods, and human occupation without major damage. This suggests the builders understood not just architecture, but geology and hydrology to an advanced degree, knowledge that might have been lost with the passing of their civilization. Walking inside, one is struck by the silence. It is the kind of silence that feels heavy, as though the air itself remembers. Light from the entrance fades into a soft gloom, broken only by the faint shimmer of water in distant pools. The immense stone pillars stand like guardians, their chisel-marked surfaces whispering in a language no one alive can read. The mind begins to fill the void with imagined scenes, the glow of torches, the clink of tools on stone, the muted conversations of workers in a place they might never see completed. The Longyou caves are not just a marvel, they are an unsolved riddle carved into the living earth. They defy our assumptions about ancient capabilities, erase our neat timelines, and remind us that history is not a complete record, but a fragile, fragmented story. Somewhere between human ingenuity and the fading of memory, these vast chambers stand as monuments to the unknown. And until the day we uncover the truth of their creators, they will remain what they have always been, a shadowed, silent legacy whispering across the centuries from the depths below.
In 1929, in the quiet halls of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, a curious discovery was made. A fragment of an ancient world map that would ignite decades of debate, speculation, and outright mystery. Known today as the Piri Reis map, it is a chart unlike any other from its time, a document that seems to defy the historical record. Drawn on a piece of gazelle skin parchment, the map dates back to 1513. It was created by Ahmed Muhyiddin Piri, better known as Piri Reis, a renowned Ottoman admiral, navigator, and cartographer. Piri was no amateur. He had spent years sailing the Mediterranean and beyond, collecting geographical knowledge from sailors, merchants, and earlier maps. But what made this discovery so extraordinary was not the mere fact of its existence, but the uncanny details it seemed to contain. The surviving fragment, roughly 1/3 of the original, shows the western coasts of Europe and Africa and the eastern coastline of South America. In itself, that would be remarkable for 1513, only 21 years after Columbus's first voyage. Yet the map appears to include details of South America's coastlines that were not officially charted for many decades afterward. Even more baffling, some interpretations claim that the southern portion of the map depicts an ice-free Antarctic coastline, something that, if true, would push the boundaries of what we think we know about human exploration and mapping.
Piri himself left clues about his sources. In inscriptions on the map, he claimed to have used about 20 different charts and maps, including some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. He specifically mentioned using 8 maps from Ptolemaic tradition, 4 from Portuguese explorers, and 1 from Christopher Columbus. That last detail is particularly intriguing because Columbus's own maps are thought to be lost. If Piri truly copied from them, this may be our only surviving glimpse of their content. The idea that the map shows Antarctica without ice has been one of its most controversial claims. In 1960, Charles Hapgood, a professor of history, argued that the map might be based on ancient charts created by a civilization with advanced geographical knowledge, possibly thousands of years before known history. Hapgood's theory suggested that Antarctica's coastline was mapped before it became covered in ice, a time frame that would place such mapping more than 6,000 years ago. He even gained the support of Albert Einstein, who wrote a preface to Hapgood's book, noting that such a possibility should be seriously considered. However, mainstream historians and cartographers remain skeptical. Most argue that the Antarctica on the map is simply a distorted depiction of South America's southernmost regions, stretched to fit the known geography of the time. Cartographic errors were common in the age of exploration, especially when trying to reconcile conflicting reports from different sources. But the mysteries don't end there. The level of accuracy along certain portions of the South American coast is far beyond what should have been possible in 1513, unless Piri's sources had far more advanced surveying techniques than what was known in Europe or the Islamic world at the time. Some believe this precision hints at an older, now lost maritime tradition, one capable of circumnavigating continents long before Columbus or Magellan. Then there's the question of the map's projection, the mathematical method used to represent the curved surface of the Earth on flat parchment. Hapgood and others have suggested that parts of the Piri Reis map employ a type of spherical trigonometry that would not be developed in Europe until centuries later. If true, this would imply access to an advanced understanding of geography and mathematics. Skeptics counter that these apparent projections may simply be coincidental or the result of Piri's attempts to reconcile mismatched data from his sources. Adding to the intrigue is the fact that only part of the map survives. What was contained in the missing sections? Did they show other continents? Could there have been even stranger details now lost to time? Piri Reis himself was executed in 1553 after a political dispute, and much of his work disappeared afterward, either lost, destroyed, or hidden in archives. The map we have today is just a fragment of a larger puzzle. The discovery of the Piri Reis map in the 20th century came at a time when the world was rethinking its history, and it quickly became a favorite among alternative historians, ancient astronaut theorists, and proponents of lost civilizations. To them, the map is proof, or at least tantalizing evidence, that humanity's past is far older and stranger than conventional history admits. For mainstream archaeology, it is an important artifact of early 16th century navigation, but not a rewriting of history. Yet standing before it in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, you can't help but feel a sense of awe. The parchment is yellowed and worn, the ink faded, but the lines and labels still carry the hand of a man who lived half a millennium ago. A man compiling knowledge from across the known world, piecing together a picture of the Earth as it was understood in his time, and perhaps as it was known to others long before. Even if the wilder theories are set aside, the Piri Reis map is a testament to the interconnectedness of early modern civilizations. It is a product of the Ottoman Empire's golden age, when Istanbul was a hub for information flowing in from Africa, Europe, and Asia. It is a reminder that exploration was not the sole domain of any single culture. It was a shared human endeavor, with knowledge crossing languages, religions, and continents. Still, the map holds on to its secrets. Whether it truly encodes ancient forgotten geography or simply reflects the best of 16th century cartography, it stands as one of history's most tantalizing documents. The lines on its surface may represent coastlines,
but they also trace the edges of our understanding and the blank spaces where mystery still reigns.
High in the remote mountains that straddle the border between China and Tibet lies a mystery that has puzzled researchers, inspired wild theories, and stirred controversy for decades. It begins in 1938, when an expedition of Chinese archaeologists led by Professor Chipute ventured into the isolated Bayankaraula Mountains. Their goal was to explore a series of caves long rumored to hold signs of ancient habitation. What they discovered was far stranger than anyone expected. Inside the caves, the team found rows of neat, small graves containing the skeletons of unusually short people, most measuring only about 4 feet tall. The skulls were disproportionately large in comparison to their bodies, and some were oddly shaped. This alone was enough to raise questions about who these people were. But it was what they found alongside the skeletons that turned an obscure archaeological dig into one of the most debated mysteries in history. Scattered among the graves were hundreds of flat, circular stone discs, each about 9 inches in diameter and less than an inch thick. At the center of each disc was a perfectly round hole, and from the hole, outward spiraled a series of fine grooves, almost like the tracks on a vinyl record. Upon closer inspection, the archaeologists realized that these grooves were not random. They were incredibly small inscriptions carved into the stone. Over time, around 716 of these discs were reportedly recovered. The symbols bitched into them were so tiny that they could only be read using magnification, and even then, their meaning was a mystery. For years, the stones sat in storage, largely ignored by the wider archaeological community. Then, in the early 1960s, a Chinese researcher named Sum Nui claimed to have deciphered the inscriptions, and his alleged translation would set off a storm of speculation. According to Sum Nui, the grooves told a strange and startling story. They described how a group of beings known as the Dropa had crash-landed on Earth thousands of years ago after their spacecraft malfunctioned. Unable to repair their craft, they were stranded in the mountains, where they eventually integrated, or clashed, with the local inhabitants. The text supposedly spoke of fear, misunderstanding, and survival in a harsh environment. If true, this would have been nothing less than proof of ancient extraterrestrial contact. But the academic establishment was deeply skeptical. Many dismissed Sum Nui's translation as pseudoscience, pointing out that no independent verification was ever provided. Some critics even claimed the entire story of the Dropa stones was a fabrication, a legend that had taken on a life of its own in UFO circles and fringe archaeology. Adding to the mystery is the fact that the physical stones themselves are difficult to track. Reports claim that several were sent to Beijing for further study in the 1960s, but if they exist today, they are not on public display. Photographs allegedly taken of the discs show weathered stone with precise spiral grooves, but skeptics argue these could easily be hoaxes or misinterpretations of ordinary artifacts. Despite the controversy, the Dropa stones remain a fixture in discussions about ancient anomalies. If we set aside the extraterrestrial angle for a moment, there is still much to puzzle over. Who were the small-statured people buried in the Bayankaraula Mountains? Were they an isolated human population with unique physical traits? And if the discs are genuine, what do the spiral inscriptions represent? Could they be a lost form of writing, a record of events, or something entirely symbolic? Some anthropologists have suggested that the story could be an exaggerated interpretation of real archaeological finds. The caves could have been home to a prehistoric tribe adapted to the high-altitude environment, with smaller bodies and larger cranial capacity due to genetic factors. The stone discs, if authentic, might have served a ceremonial or symbolic role, perhaps related to ancestor worship or cosmology. The spiral pattern could have been decorative or intended to represent cyclical concepts like time or life. Then there's the problem of the written account. The main sources for the Dropa stone story come from secondary retellings, often repeated without primary evidence. Western UFO researchers in the 1960s and 1970s seized on the tale, incorporating it into theories about ancient astronauts. In doing so, the legend grew, blending fact and fiction until it became almost impossible to separate the two. Still, the idea has a powerful allure. Imagine, in a remote, nearly inaccessible part of the world, thousands of years ago, a small band of outsiders arrives, utterly alien to the locals. Whether alien in the literal extraterrestrial sense or simply foreign in culture and appearance, their story becomes carved in stone, preserved for generations. Over millennia, the details blur, but the symbols remain, tantalizing future generations with hints of a forgotten encounter. For now, the Dropa stones exist in a kind of archaeological limbo. Without physical access to the artifacts or credible, verifiable translations of their inscriptions, their status as either an extraordinary discovery or an elaborate hoax remains unresolved. They are a reminder of how easily mystery can arise when evidence is scarce, and how quickly stories can grow beyond the control of those who first told them. Whether the Dropa stones are relics of an ancient culture, evidence of prehistoric contact with beings from beyond our world, or simply a 20th century myth, they continue to spark curiosity. They invite us to imagine the impossible while challenging us to demand better evidence. And like so many archaeological mysteries, they leave us with more questions than answers. A perfect enigma lying in the shadow of the high, windswept mountains.
In the quiet village of Fifeley, just outside Clydebank, Scotland, lies a relic of prehistory so vast and so mysterious that for decades it was hidden away from the public eye. Known as the Cochno stone, it is one of the largest and most intricate examples of prehistoric rock art in Europe, a sprawling slab of sandstone covered in hundreds of carved symbols, whose meaning remains unknown. The Cochno stone is enormous, measuring about 42 feet by 26 feet, and is covered with an array of ancient designs, concentric circles, spirals, grooves, and what are known as cup and ring marks. These carvings are estimated to be around 5,000 years old, dating back to the Neolithic or early Bronze Age. Similar motifs have been found across parts of Europe, from the British Isles to Spain and Italy, but nowhere are they displayed in such density and scale as on the Cochno stone. Discovered in 1887 by Reverend James Harvey, the stone quickly attracted attention from archaeologists and antiquarians of the time. Scholars documented the carvings, but their interpretations varied wildly. Some believed they were territorial markers, others thought they were religious or ceremonial symbols, and still others speculated they might be astronomical charts, mapping the movement of the stars and planets. By the mid-20th century, however, the site had become a victim of its own accessibility. Visitors began vandalizing the stone, adding graffiti and damaging the ancient carvings. In 1965, in a desperate effort to protect it, local authorities made a drastic decision. They buried the entire Cochno stone under several feet of soil. For more than half a century, it lay hidden from view, its intricate designs preserved beneath layers of earth. The stone returned to public consciousness in 2015 when archaeologists from the University of Glasgow undertook a project to temporarily uncover and document it in unprecedented detail. Using 3D imaging and high-resolution photography, they recorded every mark and groove. What emerged was even more impressive than expected. More than 90 carved indentations, spirals, and patterns, arranged in ways that suggest intentional design rather than random decoration. Some of the most intriguing theories about the Cochno stone involve its possible connection to astronomy. Certain patterns on the stone appear to align with the positions of stars or the sun at specific times of the year. This has led some researchers to suggest it may have been used as a kind of prehistoric calendar or observatory. Others propose that the spirals and circles could represent cosmological beliefs, perhaps maps of the heavens or symbolic depictions of life, death, and rebirth. Another theory, favored by some anthropologists, is that the carvings had a ritual or spiritual function. The cup and ring marks, for example, may have been filled with water or other substances during ceremonies, reflecting light in a way that made them shimmer. This could have been used in rites of passage, seasonal festivals, or communication with the spirit world. Of course, there are also more speculative interpretations. Some fringe researchers have suggested that the designs could be an ancient form of writing, or even a record of extraterrestrial contact. These ideas are far from mainstream, but they underscore just how enigmatic the Cochno stone remains. The truth is, no one knows for certain why these symbols were carved, or what they meant to the people who created them thousands of years ago. The stone also raises broader questions about prehistoric communication and art. Cup and ring marks, like those on the Cochno stone, appear across thousands of miles, from Scotland to Scandinavia to the Mediterranean. This suggests either a remarkable spread of ideas across early Europe or independent development of similar symbolic systems in different cultures. In either case, it hints at a level of interconnectedness or shared human experience that is easy to underestimate when looking at the distant past. After their documentation work in 2015 and again in 2016, archaeologists made the difficult decision to rebury the Cochno stone. The site was simply too vulnerable to damage from weather, erosion, and human interference. Today, it rests once more beneath the soil, its exact location known but not marked for casual visitors. In this sense, the Cochno stone exists in a strange state. It is both one of the most thoroughly recorded pieces of prehistoric art in Britain, and yet also one of the least accessible. For the public, it survives mainly in photographs, 3D models, and the fascination it inspires among historians, archaeologists, and mystery seekers. What makes the Cochno stone so compelling is not just its scale or its age, but its ability to connect us to a world without written history. Each groove was cut by hand, likely with stone tools, in an age when agriculture was still relatively new to the British Isles. Whoever carved these symbols was communicating something important, something worth hours, if not days or weeks of labor to preserve. Standing before it, if you were able to, you might feel the same mix of awe and frustration experienced by the archaeologists who uncovered it. Awe because you were looking at the handiwork of people separated from us by 5 millennia, yet capable of creating complex, organized designs. Frustration because their meaning remains locked away, sealed by time and the absence of any Rosetta Stone to decode them. In the end, the Cochno stone is more than just a prehistoric artifact. It is a reminder of the vast, silent conversations that took place in human history before words were ever written down. It speaks to a shared impulse across cultures and ages, to leave a mark, to encode meaning in stone, to communicate across the gulf of time. Whether those marks tell of the stars, the gods, the seasons, or something we can't yet imagine, they endure. And, like all the great archaeological mysteries, they invite us not just to look backward, but to wonder what we might still be missing.
In the dusty plains of southern Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers wind sluggishly toward the Persian Gulf, lie the ruins of one of humanity's earliest known civilizations, the Ubaid culture. Flourishing between 7000 and 4000 BCE, the Ubaid were master builders, farmers, and traders. They laid the foundations for the later Sumerians, and their villages are among the oldest permanent settlements in the world. Yet for all their contributions to human history, they left behind an enigma so strange, so unsettling, that it feels more like the stuff of myth than archaeology.
the Ubaid lizard figurines. These artifacts, first unearthed in the 1910s and 1920s during excavations at sites like Al-Ubaid, and Eridu, are small clay statues, typically no more than a foot tall. But their defining feature is not their size, it is their appearance. Instead of human faces, they bear the unmistakable traits of reptiles. Elongated heads tapered to narrow, pointed snouts. Wide, almond-shaped guys slope sharply toward the sides of their faces. Some have scales etched into their surfaces, others smooth, featureless skin. In every case, the resemblance to lizards or snakes is striking and deliberate. What makes the figurines even curiouser is the variety of poses and props they depict. Some stand upright in rigid, almost ceremonial stances. Others appear seated, their hands resting on their knees. A few hold staffs or scepters, hinting at authority or ritual significance. But the most puzzling examples are the ones engaged in distinctly human behaviors, cradling infants, nursing them, or appearing in pairs that suggest family units. The bodies are unmistakably humanoid, broad shoulders, defined torsos, arms and legs, but the heads are entirely reptilian. For decades, scholars have debated the meaning of these figures. Were they gods, mythological beings, artistic abstractions, or something else entirely? The Ubaid culture predates written language in Mesopotamia, leaving us no records, no myths, no religious texts to explain the imagery. The figurines themselves offer no inscriptions. They stand in silence, their blank eyes staring across 7 millennia. One conventional explanation is that they represent deities or spiritual beings associated with fertility, protection, or nature. In many early cultures, animals were symbolic. Lions for strength, bulls for virility, birds for freedom. Reptiles, in particular, held special significance in ancient Mesopotamia, often linked to the earth, water, and rebirth due to their ability to shed their skin. The lizard-headed figures could have been protectors of crops or water sources, or perhaps representations of mythical ancestors believed to have emerged from the swamps and rivers that sustained life in the region. Yet for all their contributions to human history, they left behind an enigma so strange, so unsettling, that it feels more like the stuff of myth than archaeology. The artifacts, first unearthed in the 1910s and 1920s during excavations at sites like Al-Ubaid, and Eridu, are small clay statues, typically no more than a foot tall. But their defining feature is not their size, it is their appearance. Instead of human faces, they bear the unmistakable traits of reptiles. Elongated heads taper to narrow, pointed snouts. Wide, almond-shaped eyes slope sharply toward the sides of their faces. Some have scales etched into their surfaces, others smooth, featureless skin. In every case, the resemblance to lizards or snakes is striking and deliberate. What makes the figurines even curiouser is the variety of poses and props they depict. Some stand upright, in rigid, almost ceremonial stances. Others appear seated, their hands resting on their knees. A few hold staffs or scepters, hinting at authority or ritual significance. But the most puzzling examples are the ones engaged in distinctly human behaviors, cradling infants, nursing them, or appearing in pairs that suggest family units. The bodies are unmistakably humanoid, broad shoulders, defined torsos, arms and legs, but the heads are entirely reptilian. For decades, scholars have debated the meaning of these figures. Were they gods, mythological beings, artistic abstractions, or something else entirely? The Ubaid culture predates written language in Mesopotamia, leaving us no records, no myths, no religious texts to explain the imagery. The figurines themselves offer no inscriptions. They stand in silence, their blank eyes staring across 7 millennia. One conventional explanation is that they represent deities or spiritual beings associated with fertility, protection, or nature. In many early cultures, animals were symbolic. Lions for strength, bulls for virility, birds for freedom. Reptiles, in particular, held special significance in ancient Mesopotamia, often linked to the earth, water, and rebirth due to their ability to shed their skin. The lizard-headed figures could have been protectors of props or water sources, or perhaps representations of mythical ancestors believed to have emerged from the swamps and rivers that sustained life in the region. Yet there's something about the Ubaid figurines that resists tidy classification. Their level of detail, especially in the heads, suggests intentional realism rather than stylized symbolism. The fact that some are depicted holding infants has led to far more speculative theories, most famously the ancient astronaut hypothesis. Proponents argue that these figurines are not symbolic at all, but literal representations of beings the Ubaid encountered, reptilian humanoids from beyond Earth, remembered in clay. To mainstream archaeology, such ideas are dismissed as pseudoscience, but the figurine's bizarre nature has ensured that the theory persists in popular imagination. Adding to the mystery is the uniformity of the reptilian features across multiple excavation sites. These aren't isolated artistic quirks from one village. They appear across a broad geographic area, suggesting a shared cultural concept or belief. Whatever the lizard-headed beings represented, they were important enough to be reproduced over centuries and across communities. The context in which they were found only deepens the puzzle. Many were discovered in graves, often alongside more conventional human-shaped figurines and utilitarian items like pottery. This suggests they held personal or ritual significance, perhaps meant to accompany the dead into the afterlife. Others were found in what appeared to be domestic settings, as though they were kept in homes, talismans, idols, or household guardians. The variety of contexts makes it difficult to pin down a single explanation. Some researchers have pointed to parallels in other ancient cultures. In Egypt, the god Sobek was depicted with the head of a crocodile. In Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl combined reptilian and avian traits. Across the world, snakes and lizards have appeared in myths as creators, tricksters, and destroyers. Could the Ubaid figurines be part of a much older, global tradition of reptilian symbolism, one that stretches back to humanity's earliest spiritual concepts? Or do they represent something unique to the wetlands of ancient Mesopotamia, a belief system now lost to time? Scientific analysis has confirmed the figurines' authenticity. They are not modern forgeries, nor are they the result of weathering or damage that might have distorted human features into reptilian ones. The craftsmanship is deliberate and skilled, using the same clay and firing techniques as other known Ubaid artifacts. What remains unknown is their purpose. Were they teaching tools for passing down oral traditions? Did they represent actual individuals, perhaps leaders who wore reptile-themed masks during ceremonies? Or were they purely symbolic, embodying concepts too abstract for us to grasp without the cultural framework of the Ubaid people? Standing before one in a museum case is a surreal experience. The face is alien, yet oddly familiar. The eyes seem to follow you, their gaze unblinking. There is an uncanny sense that whoever made these figures wanted to preserve something important, something about the form, the posture, the proportions, something they thought mattered enough to be remembered for thousands of years. Today, the Ubaid lizard figurines sit at the crossroads of archaeology and mystery. They challenge us to confront the gaps in our understanding of the past, to admit that not every artifact can be neatly filed into categories of religion or myth. They are a reminder that the human story is vast, incomplete, and full of strange chapters that defy easy explanation. Whether they are gods, ancestors, symbols, or something far stranger, the lizard-headed beings of the Ubaid remain frozen in clay, their secret untold, a silent testament from an age before history began.
In the rolling hills of southeastern Zimbabwe,
Surrounded by acacia-dotted plains and rocky granite outcrops, lies one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in Africa, the Great Zimbabwe Ruins. It is a city without equal on the continent, an ancient stone metropolis whose scale and craftsmanship astonished the first Europeans to lay eyes on it. And yet, for all its grandeur, Great Zimbabwe's origins and purpose remain shrouded in mystery. The site stretches over nearly 800 hectares, divided into three main architectural zones: the hill complex, the Great Enclosure, and the valley ruins. The hill complex, perched atop a granite knoll, is thought to have been the spiritual and political center of the settlement. Below it, the Great Enclosure dominates the landscape, an immense elliptical wall of stone more than 250 meters in circumference and in places over 10 meters high. Further out, the valley ruins contain the remains of hundreds of stone houses, suggesting that thousands once lived here. What sets Great Zimbabwe apart from other ancient cities is its construction. The walls are built entirely without mortar, yet they have stood for centuries. Stones were carefully selected and shaped, stacked with remarkable precision, their stability relying solely on their weight and the skill of the builders. The result is architecture that is both functional and breathtaking, with smooth curves, narrow passageways, and towering facades. In some places, the walls taper gracefully toward the top, giving them a sense of elegance unusual for defensive or ceremonial structures. The city reached its peak between the 11th and 15th centuries, during a time when southern Africa was a hub of trade linking the interior with the Indian Ocean coast. Archaeologists have found Chinese porcelain, Persian glassware, and Arab coins among the ruins, evidence that the people of Great Zimbabwe were connected to global trade networks stretching thousands of kilometers. Gold mined in the region was likely a major export, along with ivory and possibly cattle. Yet for all the material evidence, we still don't know exactly who built Great Zimbabwe. The dominant theory is that it was the work of the Shona ancestors, a Bantu-speaking people whose descendants still live in the region today. Oral traditions and linguistic connections support this view. But for centuries, the site's origins were the subject of heated and often politically motivated debate. When Europeans rediscovered the ruins in the late 19th century, they could not believe that such an advanced city had been built by African hands. Early colonialists, driven by racist assumptions, concocted elaborate theories linking the site to the Phoenicians, the Queen of Sheba, or even ancient Arabs. These ideas were not supported by evidence, but they persisted in popular imagination for decades, serving as a convenient myth to justify colonial occupation. It wasn't until the mid-20th century that systematic archaeological work, particularly by Gertrude Caton Thompson, confirmed what local people had long known. Great Zimbabwe was built by Africans for Africans centuries before European arrival. This realization was not just an academic correction, it was a profound restoration of cultural heritage. Still, even with the builders identified, many questions remain. What was the exact function of the Great Enclosure? Some suggest it was a royal residence, a place where rulers lived in seclusion, shielded from public view by the towering walls. Others argue it was a ceremonial space, perhaps for initiation rites or religious gatherings. The conical tower within the enclosure, a massive stone structure with no internal chambers, adds to the puzzle. Its purpose is unknown. It may have symbolized royal authority, represented a granary, or been purely decorative. The hill complex is equally enigmatic.
Its terraces, stone passages, and hidden chambers suggest a space of great significance, possibly serving both political and spiritual roles. From this vantage point, a ruler could survey the city and the surrounding countryside, reinforcing their power in both practical and symbolic terms. The hill may have been the domain of a spiritual elite, blending governance with religious authority. Great Zimbabwe's decline is as mysterious as its rise. By the 15th century, the city was largely abandoned. Some scholars attribute this to environmental pressures. Overgrazing and deforestation may have degraded the land, making it difficult to sustain the large population. Others point to shifting trade routes that left the city isolated. Whatever the cause, the people dispersed, leaving the once thriving city to crumble under the sun and rain. Today, the ruins are a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a potent symbol of African achievement. For Zimbabwe, whose very name comes from the Shona term Zimbadzamabwe, houses of stone, the site is a source of national pride. Yet the mystery lingers in the silence between the stones. Walking through the great enclosure, you can almost hear the echoes of footsteps on the worn granite paths, the low murmur of voices in a language that has not been spoken for centuries. At sunset, when the light strikes the stone walls and turns them a deep golden hue, it's easy to imagine the city in its glory. Traders arriving from distant lands, the smoke of cooking fires rising from the valley, the sound of drums carrying across the hills. The walls stand as they have for hundreds of years, their builders' names forgotten, their stories half told. In the end, Great Zimbabwe reminds us that history is not always written in books. Sometimes it is carved in stone, waiting for those who will listen to its silent language. And while archaeologists may one day piece together more of the city's story, some part of its mystery will always remain, hidden in the curves of its walls and the shadows of its towers.
Off the southern coast of Japan, beneath the turquoise waters of the East China Sea, lies a colossal structure that has sparked one of the fiercest debates in modern archaeology. It is known as the Yonaguni Monument, and its discovery in the 1980s ignited a storm of questions that remain unanswered to this day. Is it a natural rock formation, sculpted by the forces of the sea? Or is it the eroded remnant of a lost civilization, perhaps one that predates known history? The story begins in 1986, when a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake was scouting for new sites to attract tourists to Yonaguni Island, the westernmost inhabited island of Japan. As he swam along the seabed, about 25 meters, 82 feet below the surface, he stumbled upon something remarkable. Massive stone terraces, angular steps, and broad platforms rising from the ocean floor. The sheer scale and sharp geometry of the formation seemed too precise to be random. The monument measures roughly 150 meters long, 40 meters wide, and 27 meters tall at its highest point. Its sides appear to feature flat surfaces, straight edges, and right-angled corners. There are broad stair-like steps that rise in perfect succession, a towering stage area, and deep trenches that seem to have been cut deliberately. In some places, what look like roadways or corridors extend away from the main structure. When marine geologist Dr. Masaaki Kimura examined the site in the 1990s, he became convinced that it was not purely natural. He argued that the sharp lines, tool-like marks, and apparent layouts pointed to human modification, perhaps 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were much lower and Yonaguni was connected to a larger landmass. Kimura went as far as to suggest that the monument might be the remains of a lost Pacific civilization, one that flourished before being swallowed by the rising seas at the end of the last ice age. His claims drew attention and criticism. Many geologists, both in Japan and abroad, pointed out that the rock composing the Yonaguni Monument is sandstone, which naturally fractures along horizontal and vertical planes. In other words, given enough time, water, and tectonic pressure, sandstone can break into blocks and shapes that look eerily man-made. They argued that underwater erosion, combined with seismic activity common in the region, could easily produce the sharp angles and terraces observed at Yonaguni. But Kimura and other proponents of a human origin noted features they believed were unlikely to occur naturally. These included what he interpreted as carved staircases, flat roads that seemed to lead to the main structure, and even a formation resembling a sculpture of a human face. In some areas, there were smaller, separate rock structures that he suggested might be monuments or buildings adjacent to the main platform. If the Yonaguni Monument was truly built by human hands, its implications would be staggering. The last time this part of the seabed was above water would have been around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, a period when mainstream archaeology holds that large-scale stone architecture had not yet developed. Such a find would push back the timeline of advanced construction in East Asia by thousands of years and force a rethinking of early human capabilities in the region. Of course, there are parallels elsewhere in the world. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to around 9600 BCE, have already challenged assumptions about the sophistication of prehistoric societies. Could Yonaguni be another such anomaly, proof that early humans were capable of monumental construction long before the rise of ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia? Not everyone is convinced. Skeptics emphasize that while the monument's shapes are striking, there is no direct evidence of tools, carvings, or artifacts that would conclusively link it to human builders. No pottery, tools, or cultural remains have been recovered from the site, which would be unusual for a genuine archaeological ruin. Furthermore, similar angular rock formations can be found on land in Japan's coastal cliffs, formed entirely by natural processes. The mystery deepens when we consider the cultural context. Yonaguni lies near Okinawa, part of the Ryukyu Islands, which have their own rich history and mythology. Some local legends speak of an ancient land that once connected the islands, a place that sunk beneath the waves in a cataclysm. While not definitive evidence, such stories have fueled speculation that the monument could be a relic of a real event remembered in oral tradition. For divers who visit the site today, the Yonaguni Monument is both awe-inspiring and surreal. Descending through the clear waters, the massive steps loom into view, like the submerged remains of a forgotten city. The play of sunlight through the waves casts shifting shadows over the terraces, heightening the illusion of ancient architecture. Whether it is a natural marvel or a human creation, it leaves an impression of something grand and mysterious lying just beyond the reach of certainty. In the end, the Yonaguni Monument sits at the intersection of geology and archaeology, science and speculation. If it is natural, it stands as a breathtaking example of the artistry of erosion and tectonic forces. If it is man-made, it may represent one of the oldest and most enigmatic constructions on Earth. Until definitive evidence emerges, either in the form of artifacts or unmistakable tool marks, the debate will continue to rage, drawing divers, researchers, and dreamers alike to the waters off Yonaguni. Perhaps that's the monument's true legacy. Whether born of nature or human ingenuity, it challenges us to look deeper, to question the boundaries between what we think we know and what still lies hidden beneath the surface. Like so many archaeological mysteries, it invites us to explore, to imagine, and to accept that sometimes the past refuses to give up all its secrets.
Amid the desolate expanse of Chile's Atacama Desert, one of the driest places on Earth, lies a curious and haunting archaeological enigma known as the Giant Hand. This discovery challenges our understanding of human biology, history, and the very boundaries of what we consider possible in the ancient world. The Giant Hand is not part of an elaborate ruin or carved monument, but rather an actual skeletal hand unearthed in the harsh desert sands. What makes it extraordinary is its size. The hand's bones are disproportionately large, far exceeding the size expected for any known human or primate. Its fingers are elongated, some nearly twice the length of a typical adult hand, and the bones themselves bear structural differences that defy easy classification. Initial reports of the giant hand surfaced in the early 2000s, when local miners stumbled upon skeletal remains in a remote cave. Subsequent expeditions revealed that the hand was part of a larger, partially preserved skeleton exhibiting similar anomalies, elongated limbs, and a cranial structure that hinted at something out of the ordinary. Researchers faced immediate challenges. The extreme aridity of the Atacama Desert preserved the bones exceptionally well, but also made excavation difficult. Moreover, the unusual morphology raised questions about whether these remains belonged to a species unknown to science, a pathological individual, or something else entirely. Skeptics have suggested that the bones could represent a genetic mutation or deformity within a human population, such as giantism or Marfan syndrome, conditions known to cause excessive bone growth or elongation. Others argue that the size might have been exaggerated or distorted during excavation. But several studies, including advanced CT scans and DNA analyses, have added complexity rather than clarity. Early DNA results reportedly revealed human mitochondrial DNA, suggesting the specimen was human or at least closely related. However, the nuclear DNA was fragmented, and some features appeared atypical, fueling speculation about hybridization or unknown ancestry. Adding to the intrigue, the skeleton was found in a burial context that included artifacts, pottery shards, woven textiles, and tools that align with the known cultures of the region dating back over 1,000 years. This association implies that the individual lived among early indigenous peoples, rather than representing a separate species. The giant hand's size and morphology have inspired a range of hypotheses, from the scientifically grounded to the more speculative. Some fringe theories propose it as evidence of a race of giants mentioned in ancient myths and biblical texts, beings that roamed the earth before recorded history. Others suggest extraterrestrial origins, pointing to the skeleton's unique features as proof of alien-human hybrids or visitors. Regardless of the origin theories, the giant hand forces us to confront the limitations of our understanding of ancient human variation. While giants in myth often symbolize power and mystery, the biological reality may be more complex and nuanced. The Atacama Desert itself has proven fertile ground for strange discoveries. In 2003, a tiny skeleton, nicknamed Ata, was found nearby, sparking its own wave of controversy due to its unusual size and form. While Ata was eventually identified as a human fetus with genetic abnormalities, it underscored how desert conditions preserve remains that challenge simple classification. For scientists, the giant hand represents an opportunity to learn about human diversity in prehistoric South America. Was this individual part of a broader population with distinctive traits, or an outlier whose unique biology was misunderstood or overlooked? Cultural perspectives also come into play. Indigenous peoples of the Andes have rich oral histories and legends about giants and mysterious ancestors.
While such stories cannot be taken at face value as historical records, they provide context for interpreting unusual finds like the giant hand. The question remains open. Is the giant hand a reminder of the extraordinary variation within humanity's past, a sign of forgotten peoples, or a modern mystery born of misinterpretation? Today, the bones are held in scientific collections, studied with growing sophistication, but still offering more questions than answers. They stand as a testament to the Atacama's role as a silent witness to ancient knives, some known, some lost in the sands of time. In the end, the giant hand of the Atacama Desert reminds us that history is often stranger than fiction. It challenges us to look deeper, to question assumptions, and to remain humble before the vast and intricate story of human existence.
Deep within the rugged, mist-shrouded peaks of New Zealand's Mount Owen lies a fossil that has puzzled scientists and sparked controversy for nearly a century. A remarkably well-preserved claw from the moa, an enormous flightless bird that once roamed the islands. But this claw is no ordinary fossil. It bears marks that some researchers argue could only have been made by humans, suggesting a far earlier human presence in New Zealand than currently accepted. The moa, towering up to 3.6 meters tall in life and weighing hundreds of kilograms, was one of the largest birds ever known. It dominated New Zealand's ecosystem for thousands of years until its extinction roughly 600 years ago, believed to be a result of overhunting by the first Polynesian settlers, the ancestors of the Maori. Because humans and moa overlapped in time, their remains are often found together in archaeological sites with evidence of hunting and butchery clearly visible on moa bones. In 1987, a fossil claw was uncovered in a cave near Mount Owen by a team led by paleontologist Trevor Worthy. The claw was stunningly preserved, but what caught the attention of researchers was a series of distinctive scratches and incisions on its surface. These markings appeared intentional, as if someone had carved or etched the bone after the moa's death. The style and precision of the scratches suggested tool use rather than natural wear or damage from scavengers. This discovery raised immediate questions. Could this claw be evidence of ritualistic behavior by early humans? Were these markings some form of proto-writing or symbolic communication? Or was the claw simply a tool or object that had been repurposed by the first inhabitants? Current understanding places the first human arrival in New Zealand around 1250 to 1300 CE, when Polynesian voyagers arrived in the islands. But if the Mount Owen claw markings predate this by centuries, as some have controversially claimed, it would upend accepted timelines and suggest a mysterious earlier human presence, possibly from an unknown source. Skeptics argue that the scratches might be natural in origin. Similar marks can be produced by geological processes such as rock abrasion or even insect activity. They caution that without clear context, such as associated human artifacts or dating evidence, the markings alone cannot prove human interaction. Nevertheless, the claw's discovery adds to a broader puzzle about New Zealand's prehistoric past. Fossil remains of moa are common, but evidence of human activity is comparatively sparse until the arrival of Polynesians. The possibility of pre-Polynesian visitors, whether from South America, Melanesia, or other unknown origins, has long intrigued researchers, though no conclusive proof has been found. The moa itself holds a special place in New Zealand's natural and cultural history. It was not only a giant bird, but also a keystone species that shaped the environment. Its extinction dramatically altered ecosystems and paved the way for the dominance of smaller bird species and introduced mammals brought by humans. The moa's disappearance is a reminder of how human arrival can transform landscapes and biodiversity.
Some Maori oral traditions speak of mysterious birdmen or ancient beings associated with giant birds, adding a layer of myth to the scientific mystery. While oral history cannot substitute for empirical evidence, it highlights how the Moa remains woven into cultural memory, sometimes in ways that hint at forgotten histories. The Mount Owen Moa claw's mystery extends beyond the marks on its surface. It asks us to consider how we interpret the past and the limits of archaeological evidence in remote and challenging environments. Caves like the one where the claw was found are natural time capsules, preserving clues in layers of sediment and stone. Yet those clues are often fragmentary and open to multiple interpretations. Could the claw's markings represent an early form of human expression? Were they utilitarian, perhaps sharpening or decorating a tool? Or are they a trick of nature, a coincidence of erosion and mineral deposits? The truth remains elusive. In broader terms, the Mount Owen Moa claw embodies the tantalizing nature of archaeological mysteries, where a single object can challenge entire narratives, inviting us to question what we think we know about human migration, interaction, and symbolism. Each scratch on the claw is like a whisper from the distant past, urging us to listen more closely, to look beyond assumptions, and to remain open to the unexpected. Today, the claw is preserved in a museum collection, studied by scientists who continue to debate its significance. For the public, it stands as a symbol of the unknown, a piece of ancient history that refuses to be fully understood. It reminds us that beneath the mountains and forests of New Zealand lie secrets waiting patiently to be uncovered.
In the shadowy world of cryptic manuscripts and unsolved codes, one artifact reigns supreme as the most perplexing and mysterious document ever discovered: the Voynich manuscript. This slender, 240-page book, written in an indecipherable script and filled with strange illustrations, has baffled linguists, cryptographers, and historians for over a century, resisting every attempt to unlock its secrets. The manuscript first came to modern attention in 1912 when it was purchased by Wilfrid Voynich, a rare book dealer from a Jesuit college in Italy. Since then, it has passed through the hands of scholars and codebreakers worldwide, none able to conclusively decipher its contents or even identify the language in which it was written. Its pages are filled with bizarre drawings, plants that do not resemble any known species, astronomical diagrams of strange stars and suns, naked figures bathing in green pools, and cryptic symbols flowing in unbroken lines of text. The handwriting itself is consistent and elegant, indicating a practiced scribe, but the language remains utterly foreign. What makes the Voynich manuscript especially enigmatic is that it defies known linguistic patterns. Statistical analysis shows the text is neither random gibberish nor a straightforward cipher. Its letter distribution follows linguistic laws found in natural languages, yet no known language matches its structure. Scholars have proposed countless theories. Some believe it is a sophisticated code created by a secret society or an ancient cult intended to conceal forbidden knowledge. Others suggest it might be an elaborate hoax designed to confound and mystify. More recent ideas propose that it is a constructed language or a lost dialect now extinct. The manuscript's illustrations deepen the mystery. The plant drawings could be fantastical or symbolic, representing medicinal herbs, spiritual concepts, or entirely imagined flora. The astronomical and astrological diagrams hint at esoteric knowledge, perhaps relating to early cosmology or mystical traditions. One theory is that the Voynich manuscript was a pharmacopoeia, a guide to herbal medicine and healing practices from an unknown tradition,
The bathing women could symbolize purification rituals or therapeutic processes, yet no conclusive link has been established to any known culture or medical practice. Radiocarbon dating places the manuscript's creation between 1404 and 1438, firmly within the European Renaissance, a period of intense interest in science, alchemy, and secret knowledge. This timing fuels speculation that it might be the work of a polymath or an alchemist experimenting with language and symbolism. The manuscript's provenance before the 17th century remains a mystery. Its earliest confirmed owner was Georg Beresch, an obscure alchemist in Prague who found it baffling. It later passed to the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, who reportedly believed it was the work of Roger Bacon, a 13th century English friar and scientist, though that attribution is highly contested. Modern cryptographers, including those from the NSA and other intelligence agencies, have tried and failed to crack the code. Computer algorithms have analyzed its text extensively, but the Voynich manuscript remains impervious to decryption. The manuscript has inspired artists, writers, and conspiracy theorists alike. It appears in countless works of fiction and pop culture, representing the ultimate unsolved mystery, a symbol of the limits of human knowledge and the allure of the unknown. In recent years, advances in imaging and multispectral analysis have revealed previously invisible details such as erased text and faded annotations, but these have only deepened the mystery rather than resolving it. The Voynich manuscript continues to sit locked behind glass at Yale University's Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library, its pages unreadable but captivating all who glimpse it. Is it a code waiting to be broken, a secret message from a lost civilization, or an elaborate intellectual prank? The answer remains elusive, but its enigmatic script invites endless curiosity, a silent challenge from the past, daring us to decipher what may forever remain a mystery.
Deep beneath the surface of South Africa's ancient mining region near Klerksdorp lie small, mysterious objects that have baffled scientists and enthusiasts alike for decades. Known as the Klerksdorp spheres, these tiny stone spheres possess characteristics that defy conventional explanation, challenging our understanding of geology and ancient human activity. Discovered in the 1940s during mining operations in pyrophyllite deposits, the spheres range in size from a few millimeters to several centimeters in diameter. At first glance, they appear to be simple mineral concretions, naturally formed accumulations of minerals. Yet their perfectly spherical shapes, along with unusual grooves and ridges that encircle many of them, suggest a complexity that goes beyond natural processes. What makes the Klerksdorp spheres particularly intriguing is their age. Geological analysis dates the rock formations containing them to about 2.8 billion years old, placing them well before the emergence of complex life on Earth. This fact alone raises a profound question. How could objects resembling manufactured spheres appear in rock so ancient that no humans existed at the time? Some enthusiasts propose that the spheres are artifacts crafted by an unknown prehistoric civilization, or even evidence of advanced ancient technology lost to history. They point to the grooves and symmetrical shapes as signs of intentional design, suggesting the spheres might have been tools, bearings, or symbolic objects. Skeptics, however, argue that the spheres are natural geological formations called concretions, which form when mineral-rich water deposits layers of minerals around a nucleus, such as a fossil fragment or a grain of sand, over millions of years. Variations in mineral composition and pressure can create smooth, rounded shapes and sometimes even grooves. Laboratory studies have shown that the spheres are primarily composed of hematite and wollastonite, minerals commonly found in sedimentary rocks.
Some of the grooves are believed to result from natural fracturing and weathering processes rather than deliberate carving. Despite these explanations, the Klerksdorp spheres continue to fuel debates. Their symmetrical appearance and unusual features challenge researchers to reconsider what natural processes are capable of, especially under the extreme geological conditions of Earth's distant past. Adding to the intrigue, some spheres had an internal structure visible under microscopes that resemble tiny drill holes or cavities, which some interpret as evidence of manufacturing. Others suggest these features are the result of mineral inclusions or gas bubbles trapped during formation. The spheres have found a place in popular culture and alternative archaeology circles as out-of-place artifacts, objects that seem too advanced or unusual for the era in which they were found. This category often attracts speculation about lost civilizations, extraterrestrial intervention, or undiscovered chapters of human history. Mainstream science remains cautious, emphasizing the importance of rigorous geological study and evidence-based conclusions. The Klerksdorp spheres serve as a reminder of how nature can sometimes mimic forms that appear artificial, blurring the line between the natural and the man-made. Today, the spheres are housed in museums and private collections, admired both for their enigmatic beauty and the questions they provoke. For scientists, they offer a fascinating glimpse into Earth's geological processes and the complexity of mineral formation over billions of years. Ultimately, the Klerksdorp spheres stand as silent witnesses to a time long before humans walked the Earth, their origins a puzzle that continues to captivate curiosity and challenge certainty.
Deep in the heart of central Mexico lies the ancient city of Teotihuacan, a sprawling metropolis that once stood as one of the largest and most influential urban centers of the ancient world. Its wide avenues, massive pyramids, and carefully planned layout speak of a people with incredible architectural skill and a complex social structure. Yet, despite its grandeur, the city remains shrouded in mystery. We still don't know who built it, why it was abandoned, or even what the people called themselves. Among its many enigmas, one discovery has baffled archaeologists and ignited waves of speculation: the presence of liquid mercury beneath one of its temples. This strange and toxic substance, found in a subterranean chamber, raises profound questions about the rituals, beliefs, and possible technological capabilities of the city's inhabitants. The story begins in 2003, when archaeologists began exploring a tunnel beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, also known as the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, the third largest pyramid in Teotihuacan. The tunnel had been sealed for nearly 1,800 years, hidden away since the city's decline. Over the next decade, researchers painstakingly excavated the passage, uncovering offerings of jade, shells, and elaborate sculptures, all arranged as if to guard the entrance to something of great significance. In 2015, Sergio Gomez, the lead archaeologist of the project, announced a startling find. In a chamber deep beneath the pyramid, his team had detected pools of liquid mercury. The discovery was unprecedented in Mesoamerican archaeology. Mercury is rare in liquid form in nature and is highly toxic, making it an unlikely choice for any practical purpose. So, why was it there? One theory suggests that the mercury represented a symbolic element in the city's cosmology. In many ancient cultures, Mercury's shimmering, reflective surface was associated with the supernatural, the underworld, or the divine. The Aztecs, who arrived in the region centuries after Teotihuacan's fall, believed in an underworld river. Perhaps the mercury was meant to imitate this, creating a reflective water for spirits to traverse in the afterlife. If this interpretation is correct, the Mercury pools might have been part of elaborate ritual ceremonies. Imagine priests descending into the dark, stone-cut chamber, where the metallic liquid shimmered and moved like a living thing. Such a setting would have been awe-inspiring, even terrifying for participants, a tangible connection to the realm of gods and ancestors. Another possibility is that the Mercury was linked to some lost technological process. Mercury was known to many ancient cultures, including the Chinese and Romans, for its use in gilding, medicine, and even alchemy. In Mesoamerica, cinnabar, the ore from which mercury is extracted, was often used as a pigment, particularly in burials, where its bright red color symbolized life and regeneration. Could the mercury at Teotihuacan have been part of a metallurgical or ceremonial craft now lost to history? Some researchers have even proposed that the mercury might have been part of a symbolic map or model of the cosmos, with the tunnel beneath the pyramid representing a journey through the underworld. This fits with the broader design of Teotihuacan, where the city's layout seems aligned with astronomical events, and its pyramids mirror the shapes of sacred mountains. Whatever its purpose, the mercury poses a puzzle in terms of acquisition and handling. Extracting mercury from cinnabar requires heating the ore to high temperatures, a process that releases dangerous fumes. This means the people of Teotihuacan not only understood how to obtain mercury, but were willing to risk exposure to a substance that could cause illness or death. That suggests the material was valued highly enough to justify those risks. What makes the find even more mysterious is that Teotihuacan predates the Aztec Empire by centuries, yet we know almost nothing about the beliefs of its original builders. No written records survive, and the murals and artifacts that remain offer only fragments of their worldview. In this context, the mercury becomes another tantalizing clue in a puzzle with too many missing pieces. Skeptics cautioned against overinterpreting the discovery. Some suggest that the mercury might have been stored in sealed vessels that later broke, spilling their contents into the chamber. If so, the liquid might not have been part of a grand ritual at all, but simply an offering of valuable material placed in the tomb-like space. Yet, given the difficulty of obtaining it, even this would point to its significance in the culture. The presence of mercury in other parts of the ancient world adds another layer to the mystery. In China's first emperor's tomb, for example, historical records speak of rivers and seas of mercury created to represent the landscape of his empire. Could this be a case of independent invention, different civilizations arriving at the same idea for symbolic reasons? Or does it hint, however faintly, at shared concepts that traveled farther than we think in the ancient world? Today, the mercury beneath Teotihuacan remains in place, inaccessible to the public for safety reasons. The chambers are still being studied, and the full extent of what lies there is unknown. Each new discovery in the tunnel, whether it be jade figurines, seashells carried inland from distant shores, or strange metallic spheres found nearby, adds to the growing sense that this was no ordinary space. Teotihuacan itself, with its massive Avenue of the Dead and towering pyramids, seems designed to embody cosmic order on a grand scale. Perhaps the mercury-filled chamber beneath the Temple of the Feathered Serpent was a microcosm of that vision, a hidden, sacred space where the boundaries between life, death, and the divine dissolved in the shimmering glow of liquid metal. Until we can fully understand its purpose, the mercury of Teotihuacan stands as a silent testament to the sophistication and the mystery of a civilization that continues to defy easy explanation. Whether it was meant to guide souls, replicate the underworld, or serve some entirely different function, It remains one of the most haunting and enigmatic finds in the history of the Americas.
Nestled in the highlands near the shimmering expanse of Lake Titicaca in Bolivia lies one of the most enigmatic and controversial artifacts ever unearthed in South America, the Fuente Magna bowl. At first glance, this seemingly unassuming ceramic vessel might pass as just another relic among the vast ruins scattered throughout the Andes. Yet upon closer inspection, it challenges our deepest assumptions about ancient civilizations, their interactions, and the true scope of early human connectivity across the globe. Discovered in the 1950s by local farmers near the ruins of Pumapunku, itself part of the greater Tiwanaku complex, the Fuente Magna bowl carries inscriptions that, if authentic, would upend the established timeline and geography of ancient writing systems. Pumapunku and Tiwanaku represent some of the most architecturally and astronomically advanced pre-Columbian societies, renowned for their precisely cut stonework and mysterious cultural legacy. However, nothing about these societies prepared scholars for the puzzle presented by the bowl's inscriptions. What makes the Fuente Magna bowl extraordinary are the two distinct types of script etched into its surface. One side is adorned with cuneiform characters, wedge-shaped symbols developed thousands of years ago in Mesopotamia by the Sumerians, the world's earliest known civilization. These markings were the first writing system ever invented, used to record everything from trade transactions to epic tales. The other side bears symbols that resemble Proto-Sumerian or Proto-Elamite script, a closely related and even older form of writing whose origins remain partly mysterious. The presence of these ancient Old World scripts in the heart of South America is nothing short of astounding. If genuine, these inscriptions suggest a cultural connection that mainstream archaeology has long dismissed as impossible. The idea that Sumerian or Proto-Elamite influences somehow reached the high Andes, bridging an enormous geographic and temporal gulf. Since its discovery, the Fuente Magna bowl has sparked intense debate and controversy. Skeptics argue that the inscriptions are modern forgeries or coincidental patterns carved by untrained hands attempting to mimic ancient scripts. Some suggest that the bowl was a manufactured curiosity, introduced to the region relatively recently, perhaps even as a hoax to attract tourists or confuse researchers. Supporters, however, emphasized the striking precision and stylistic accuracy of the inscriptions, pointing to clear correspondences with verified Sumerian cuneiform signs, including the arrangement, form, and curvature of characters that would be difficult to replicate without specialized knowledge. Several scholars who've studied the bowl's markings argue that the inscriptions bear the unmistakable hallmarks of authentic ancient writing rather than random scratches or imitation. If the Fuente Magna bowl is indeed an authentic artifact of ancient origin, the implications ripple far beyond Bolivia. It forces us to reconsider our understanding of early human migrations, suggesting the possibility of transoceanic contact between distant civilizations millennia before Columbus's voyages. How could such connections have been established? Were there early sailors or explorers brave enough to cross vast oceans, exchanging goods, ideas, and knowledge in ways history has forgotten? Some theorists propose that ancient mariners from the Fertile Crescent or Mesopotamia might have voyaged westward across the Atlantic or along coastal routes, reaching South America and influencing local cultures. This theory challenges the conventional Clovis first model that has long dominated the study of the Americas' peopling, which holds that the continent was primarily populated by Asian migrants crossing the Bering Land Bridge. Others suggest the bowl represents evidence of convergent cultural evolution, that similar writing systems might have independently arisen in different parts of the world as humans faced comparable challenges in communication and record-keeping. While such parallel development is possible, the striking similarities to Sumerian cuneiform raise questions about coincidence versus connection. The Tiwanaku civilization itself further complicates the picture.
Flourishing between approximately 500 and 1000 CE, Tiwanaku showcased remarkable architectural skill and astronomical knowledge. Its megalithic temples, precise stone joints, and urban planning continue to baffle researchers. If the Fuente Magna Bull is linked to Tiwanaku, it could suggest that this culture had a broader worldview, one perhaps informed by contact with distant civilizations or enriched by shared symbolic traditions. Unfortunately, the bull's archaeological context is problematic. Unlike many significant finds carefully excavated by professionals, the Fuente Magna Bull was discovered by local farmers rather than through controlled digs, obscuring its precise provenance. Without a securely dated archaeological layer or carbon-dated material directly associated with the bull, its age and authenticity remain difficult to verify conclusively. Mainstream academia tends to regard the bull with caution, viewing it as an outlier lacking corroborating evidence. The absence of similar artifacts bearing Sumerian-style inscriptions in South America makes it difficult to accept widespread Old World influence. The burden of proof lies heavily on proponents of transoceanic contact theories. Nonetheless, the Fuente Magna Bull captivates many enthusiasts of ancient mysteries and alternative history. It embodies the tension between established scholarly narratives and the tantalizing possibility that history is far richer and more interconnected than traditionally believed. The bull stands as a symbol of how new discoveries, whether authentic or controversial, can challenge our assumptions and invite deeper inquiry. Ultimately, whether the Fuente Magna Bull is a genuine relic of early transoceanic exchange, a product of convergent invention, or an elaborate hoax, it pushes us to keep questioning, exploring, and expanding our understanding of human history. It reminds us that history is not a fixed story written once and for all, but an evolving tapestry shaped by ongoing discovery and interpretation.
On the shores of New Hampshire's Lake Winnipesaukee, a mysterious artifact was unearthed that has puzzled archaeologists, historians, and enthusiasts for over a century. Known simply as the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, this small yet intricately carved object raises more questions than it answers, hinting at lost histories and cultural connections we still do not fully understand. The story begins in 1872, when a crew of workers was digging a post hole for a fence on land belonging to businessman Seneca A. Ladd. The site was near the small town of Meredith, close to the lake's edge. About 6 feet underground, embedded in the hard clay, the workers struck something unusual: a dark, egg-shaped stone, smooth to the touch and adorned with precise carvings. Ladd, intrigued, took the artifact to local experts and collectors, and it quickly became a regional sensation. Over time, it became known simply as the Mystery Stone, and in the decades since, it has attracted speculation, theories, and intense debate. The stone itself is about 4 inches tall and 2.5 inches wide, with a dark, fine-grained surface, possibly quartzite. What truly sets it apart are the carvings, carefully etched images of arrows, an ear of corn, a teepee, a spiral, and other abstract shapes. The arrangement is deliberate, and the craftsmanship is exceptional, suggesting that whoever made it had access to advanced tools and a clear symbolic purpose. Adding to the enigma is a set of holes drilled into the stone, one through the pointed end and another through the side. Microscopic examination has revealed that the holes were created with a high degree of precision, possibly with a mechanical drill rather than simple stone tools. This detail has fueled theories that the artifact could be far younger or far older than originally assumed, and perhaps not even of indigenous origin. Over the years, numerous interpretations have been put forward.
Some believe the Mystery Stone is a ceremonial object created by Native American tribes, perhaps as a peace offering, a fertility symbol, or a marker of an important alliance. The carved corn motif, for instance, could signify agriculture, prosperity, or sustenance, while the arrows and teepee might symbolize hunting, settlement, or tribal identity. Others argue for a much broader and stranger origin. Could the stone have been crafted by a pre-Columbian culture from across the ocean, brought to North America via early transoceanic contact? The precision of the drilled holes, especially given the difficulty of working with quartzite, has led some to speculate that the stone might be far younger or far older than originally assumed, and perhaps not even of indigenous origin. There is also the possibility that the Mystery Stone is not ancient at all, but rather a 19th century creation made to resemble something older. This theory, while less romantic, cannot be fully dismissed, as the artifact was not found during a formal archaeological dig and lacks precise documentation of its original context. Without reliable dating, its age remains uncertain. Despite the uncertainty, there are elements that make the stone difficult to dismiss as a simple hoax. The symbolic language of the carvings bears similarities to known indigenous iconography of the region, yet also departs from it in ways that are hard to explain. The symmetrical drilling is equally perplexing. While some Native American groups were capable of drilling small holes with stone tools, the smoothness and uniformity seen here suggest a much more refined method. Today, the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone resides in the New Hampshire Historical Society's collection, where it continues to inspire fascination. Displayed behind glass, it draws visitors who gaze at it and wonder, who carved this? Why? And how did it end up buried deep beneath the New England soil? If it is ancient, it could represent a missing chapter in the story of early human presence in North America, a tangible link to cultures and peoples whose histories have been obscured by time. If it is more recent, it still stands as an extraordinary example of craftsmanship and the enduring human impulse to encode meaning into objects. In the end, the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone remains exactly what its name suggests, a mystery. Whether it is an artifact of deep antiquity, a relic of forgotten contact, or a more modern curiosity, it reminds us of how little we truly know about the hidden narratives buried beneath our feet. And like so many archaeological enigmas, it whispers a timeless challenge to the modern mind. Look closer, dig deeper, and never stop asking questions. Deep beneath the sands of Egypt's ancient necropolises lies an artifact that continues to mystify archaeologists, engineers, and historians alike: the Sabu disc. Discovered in 1936 inside the tomb of Sabu, a high-ranking official from Egypt's first dynasty, circa 3100 to 2900 BCE. This disc is unlike any other object uncovered from that era. Its unique shape, precise craftsmanship, and mysterious purpose have made it one of Egyptology's enduring puzzles, a symbol of the complexity and sophistication of early Egyptian civilization, but also a reminder of how much remains unknown. The Sabu disc measures approximately 61 centimeters, around 2 feet, in diameter, and is carved from a single piece of schist, a dense, fragile, metamorphic stone. What makes this disc so intriguing is its unusual design. Unlike the smooth, flat discs or amulets commonly found in Egyptian tombs, the Sabu disc features a trilobed form, with 3 large curved protrusions spaced evenly around its circumference, resembling a 3-bladed propeller or a triskelion. Inside the disc, intricate ridges and concentric circles add to its complexity, suggesting a level of geometric understanding and artistic skill rare for its time. Crafting such a delicate and symmetrical object from schist would have required exceptional precision. Considering the tools available in the early dynastic period, primarily copper chisels, stone hammers, and abrasives, artisans must have employed sophisticated techniques and immense patience to carve the disc without cracking or damaging it. This level of craftsmanship speaks to a highly skilled labor force and advanced knowledge of materials, surprising for a civilization still in its formative stages. Traditional Egyptologists have often viewed the Sabu disc as a ceremonial or symbolic object rather than a tool. Given ancient Egypt's rich religious culture, where objects were imbued with spiritual significance, it's plausible the disc was meant to represent cosmic forces, perhaps symbolizing the sun's motion, the cyclical nature of life and death, or the harmonious balance of the universe. The tri-lobed design may have carried religious connotations, echoing themes of triplicity seen elsewhere in Egyptian mythology and iconography, such as the triad of gods or the three realms of existence, earth, sky, and underworld. Yet despite these explanations, the disc's shape is so unusual that it has prompted a range of alternative theories, some bordering on the speculative. Among these, one of the most captivating ideas is that the Sabu disc functioned as a primitive flywheel, a mechanical device designed to store rotational energy. This theory arises from the disc's aerodynamic form, which would allow it to spin smoothly, storing and regulating energy, much like modern flywheels used in engines and machinery. If true, it would imply that the Egyptians had a grasp of mechanical principles far earlier than previously believed. Some proponents of this theory suggest the disc could have been part of an ancient machine, perhaps a water pump, a rotary device used in construction, or even an element of a forgotten engine. Though no direct evidence of such machinery exists from the early dynastic period, the possibility of lost technologies challenges the linear progression narrative that places such innovations exclusively in the modern or industrial era. Experimental archaeologists have attempted to replicate the Sabu disc using traditional methods and materials, testing its mechanical properties by spinning models to evaluate the flywheel hypothesis. These experiments show that the disc could spin smoothly and maintain momentum, lending some support to the idea that it might have served a practical function beyond decoration or ritual. However, skeptics caution that the absence of corroborating artifacts or textual references make this theory tenuous. Adding to the mystery is the disc's unique status as a singular artifact. No other objects from ancient Egypt resemble the Sabu disc in shape or function, leaving scholars without comparative material to better understand its role. Its discovery inside a high-ranking tomb suggests it held significance, perhaps reserved for elite or priestly classes with specialized knowledge. The context of Sabu's tomb also offers cultural clues. The early dynastic period was a time of political consolidation and religious development in Egypt. Objects buried with important officials often symbolized their status and connection to divine forces. The Sabu disc may have been a symbol of power or spiritual protection, representing the mastery of cosmic forces or the eternal cycle of life. The intricate geometric patterns on the disc echo the Egyptians' profound fascination with mathematics, symmetry, and order. Temples and pyramids were designed according to precise measurements and alignments, reflecting a worldview that saw the cosmos as a harmonious system governed by balance and proportion. The Sabu disc could be a tangible expression of these ideas, embodying abstract principles in physical form. Modern scholars continue to debate the disc's purpose. Some propose it might have been a ritualistic object related to sun worship, perhaps used in ceremonies symbolizing the sun's journey across the sky. Others think it could have functioned as a ceremonial tool to represent time or the calendar, linking it to agricultural cycles and the rhythm of the Nile's floods. Beyond scholarly circles, the Sabu disc has become a favorite subject among enthusiasts of ancient mysteries and alternative archaeology.
Its resemblance to modern mechanical parts fuels speculation about lost technologies and civilizations, and it often appears in discussions about the limits of our knowledge regarding ancient peoples. Despite advances in technology, including 3D imaging and material analysis, the disc remains an enigma. Its precise manufacture and the intentions behind its design continue to puzzle experts, standing as a testament to the sophistication and creativity of early Egypt, and remind us that even well-studied cultures hold secrets waiting to be uncovered. The Sabu disc is more than just an artifact. It is a symbol of humanity's enduring quest to understand our origins, achievements, and the mysteries of the past. Whether it was a ritual emblem, an artistic masterpiece, or a functional piece of ancient technology, it challenges us to rethink our assumptions about early civilization and invites us to explore the depths of human ingenuity.
Nestled on the rugged northern tip of Newfoundland, Canada, lies a site that has forever altered our understanding of early exploration and contact between the Old World and the Americas, Longyou Meadows. This unassuming patch of land is home to the only confirmed Viking settlement in North America, dating back more than a millennium, and it holds within its soil the echoes of a forgotten chapter in human history. For centuries, the stories of Norse explorers reaching the shores of a distant, resource-rich land to the west were relegated to the realm of myth and legend. The Icelandic sagas, medieval oral histories written in the 13th century, tell of voyages by Leif Erikson and others to a place called Vinland, described as abundant with wild grapes and fertile lands. These accounts were often dismissed as fanciful tales until the groundbreaking archaeological discovery at Longyou Meadows in the 1960s provided tangible proof that Vikings had indeed set foot on North American soil, nearly 500 years before Columbus. The discovery was made by Norwegian archaeologists Helge and Anstein Ingstad, who began their excavation after receiving reports from local residents about mysterious mounds and artifacts. Their meticulous work revealed the foundations of Norse-style turf houses, workshops, and forge sites, structures distinctly different from those of indigenous peoples in the region. The settlement's architecture, construction techniques, and artifacts closely match those found in Greenland and Iceland, confirming its Viking origin. Radiocarbon dating placed the site's occupation around 1000 CE, aligning perfectly with the Viking Age and the time frame described in the sagas. This established Longyou Meadows as the earliest known European settlement in the Americas. The artifacts uncovered here provide an intimate glimpse into the lives of these intrepid settlers. Iron nails, rivets, and slag indicated extensive metalworking and ship repair activities, vital for maintaining their wooden longships capable of braving the North Atlantic's fierce storms. Tools such as bone needles and stone spindle whorls suggest textile production, while fragments of pottery and everyday items reveal a community striving to adapt to a harsh, unfamiliar environment. Yet, despite the excitement surrounding the discovery, much about the settlement remains shrouded in mystery. Archaeological evidence suggests that the Norse occupation was relatively brief, possibly lasting only a decade or less. The reasons for its abandonment remain speculative. Some theories propose that conflicts with indigenous peoples, known as the Beothuk, may have forced the settlers to retreat. Others suggest that resource limitations, isolation, or strategic decisions to consolidate holdings in Greenland led to the settlement's desertion. The Norse sagas themselves hint at encounters with native populations, describing episodes ranging from trade and peaceful interactions to violent clashes.
However, no direct archaeological evidence at Longyou Meadows definitively confirms such interactions, leaving this aspect of history tantalizingly incomplete. Beyond the physical settlement, the Norse presence in Newfoundland speaks to the extraordinary seafaring skills of the Vikings. Their longships, marvels of naval engineering, allowed them to navigate treacherous seas with speed and agility, facilitating exploration across vast distances. The establishment of Longyou Meadows demonstrates their ability not only to travel, but to adapt, survive, and create outposts in new territories. This discovery has profound implications for understanding the peopling and exploration of the Americas. It challenges the dominant narrative that European arrival in the New World began with Columbus in 1492, highlighting instead a complex history of exploration, migration, and cultural encounters stretching back centuries. Today, Longyou Meadows is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, preserved as a vital link to the Viking Age and a symbol of human curiosity and resilience. Its reconstructed buildings and museum exhibits invite visitors to walk in the footsteps of these early explorers, to imagine the challenges they faced, and to appreciate the enduring legacy of their daring voyages. The Norse artifacts found at Longyou Meadows are more than remnants of a distant past. They are testament to the indomitable spirit of exploration that has driven humanity across oceans and continents. They remind us that history is not a single story, but a tapestry woven from countless journeys, encounters, and discoveries. As we continue to study this remarkable site and uncover its secrets, Longyou Meadows stands as a beacon of the human quest for knowledge and the interconnectedness of civilizations across time and space.
On the arid southern coast of Peru, where the desert meets the Pacific, lies the Paracas Peninsula, a stark, windswept land hiding one of archaeology's most puzzling discoveries. Beneath the ochre sands in ancient cemeteries dating back over 2,000 years, archaeologists unearthed dozens of human skulls unlike anything seen before. These were not ordinary crania. They were dramatically elongated, stretched into conical shapes that have fascinated, mystified, and unsettled researchers for decades. The story begins in 1928 when Peruvian archaeologist Julio C. Tello, often called the father of Peruvian archaeology, was conducting excavations in the Paracas region. Digging into the brittle desert soil, he uncovered a complex network of underground tombs, some large enough to hold entire extended families. Inside these chambers lay the remains of the Paracas people, along with intricate textiles, pottery, and grave goods that testified to a sophisticated and artistically gifted culture. But among these treasures was something wholly unexpected: skulls that were not only larger than average, but oddly shaped, sloping upward into conical domes, some nearly 25% longer than a typical human skull. At first glance, one might assume these shapes were the result of artificial cranial deformation, a practice known from various cultures around the world in which the skulls of infants are bound or wrapped to gradually reshape their heads. And indeed, cranial deformation was common among the Paracas, likely a cultural marker of status or identity. However, a closer look at the Paracas skulls revealed anomalies that fueled controversy and speculation. Some of the skulls had cranial volumes up to 25% larger than a normal human skull, with differences in bone structure, thickness, and suture patterns. While standard cranial deformation alters shape, it does not increase brain capacity, yet these skulls seem to defy that expectation. Even more puzzling was the fact that certain Paracas skulls lacked the sagittal suture entirely, the fibrous joint that typically runs along the top of the skull from front to back. In normal human anatomy, this suture is always present, even in cases of head binding. Its absence in some Paracas specimens prompted a wave of speculation. Were these individuals genetically different from the rest of humanity, or in the most fringe interpretations, beings from beyond our world? DNA analysis has added fuel to the fire. In the past decade, independent researchers have attempted to extract genetic material from the skulls. Preliminary and controversial results, released before undergoing rigorous peer review, suggested that the mitochondrial DNA in some samples did not match known Native American haplogroups, hinting at a lineage with possible origins in Eurasia or the Middle East. If true, this would imply that the Paracas people had genetic influences far removed from the Andean heartland, long before the arrival of Europeans. However, the scientific community stresses that contamination, sample size, and methodological issues make such conclusions far from certain. What is clear, however, is that the Paracas culture was unique. Their textiles are among the finest ever produced in pre-Columbian South America, woven with vivid colors and complex patterns that have survived the centuries thanks to the desert's dry climate. Their burial practices, with elaborate mummy bundles wrapped in multiple layers of fabric, show a society with deep spiritual traditions and a reverence for the dead. The elongated skulls, whether symbolic, ritualistic, or genetic in origin, were almost certainly tied to social identity, perhaps marking an elite class that ruled over the coastal region. Theories about the purpose of cranial elongation abound. Some suggest it was meant to imitate the shapes of deities or mythical ancestors. Others believe it may have been associated with perceptions of beauty, intelligence, or divine authority. In some cultures, elongation was believed to spiritually connect individuals to the heavens. Given the proximity of Paracas to the Nazca culture, which would later create the famous Nazca Lines, it's tempting to imagine these head shapes playing into a broader religious or astronomical worldview. Of course, the more sensational theories persist in popular media. Books, documentaries, and internet discussions frequently link the Paracas skulls to ancient astronauts, lost civilizations like Atlantis, or survivors of a prehistoric cataclysm. While these ideas make for exciting storytelling, they remain outside the bounds of accepted archaeological evidence. Still, the allure of the unknown means the Paracas skulls continue to feature prominently in alternative history circles. In 2014, the Paracas Museum in Peru unveiled several of the most famous skulls to the public, drawing both academic interest and tourism. Visitors stand before glass cases, staring at the elongated silhouettes, often experiencing a jolt of disbelief. Seeing them in person is different from viewing photos. There is something profoundly unsettling about how human they are, and yet how alien they appear. Even if all anomalies are eventually explained within the framework of human variation and cultural practice, the Paracas spills remain a reminder of how diverse human expression can be. They tell us that our ancestors were not static or uniform, but capable of creating and embodying ideals of identity that seem extraordinary to us today. Ultimately, the mystery of the Paracas skulls lies not only in their shape, but in what they say about human culture, migration, and imagination. Whether they represent an unusual genetic lineage, a complex tradition of head binding, or something stranger still, they stand as silent sentinels of a world we may never fully understand. As with so many ancient enigmas, the truth may lie somewhere between the prosaic and the extraordinary, and until the sands of Paracas yield all their secrets, the debate will continue. In the arid, wind-scoured plains of southern Peru, etched across nearly 200 square miles of stark desert, lies one of humanity's most astonishing and perplexing achievements, the Nazca Lines. These massive geoglyphs, some stretching over 1,200 feet in length, with the largest complex covering nearly 1,000 acres, were created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by the ancient Nazca culture, a pre-Columbian civilization that thrived in this inhospitable environment. Yet, despite decades of intensive study by archaeologists, anthropologists, astronomers, and historians, no one can say with certainty why they were made, how their creators achieved such breathtaking precision without modern surveying tools, or what profound purpose these gigantic designs ultimately served in the Nazca worldview. The lines represent an enigma that challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities and motivations. The Nazca Desert, where these lines reside, is one of the driest places on Earth, receiving less than an inch of rainfall per year. With virtually no rainfall and minimal wind erosion due to the stable surface layer, the landscape has remained remarkably unchanged for millennia. The lines were formed through a deceptively simple yet labor-intensive method, carefully and systematically removing the top layer of reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles and stones that cover the desert surface, revealing the lighter-colored, gypsum-rich earth beneath. This contrast creates the visible lines. This method, simple in theory but requiring immense coordination and manpower, resulted in shapes so vast and complex that they can only be fully appreciated from an aerial perspective, a puzzling detail given that the Nazca people had no known means of flight, making the intended audience or purpose for such a viewpoint deeply mysterious. One of the central mysteries is the question of scale and perspective. Standing on the ground amidst the lines, you might walk along one of these paths for hours without realizing you're traversing a single element within a massive coherent drawing. The full form, the intended composition, can only be recognized from an altitude of hundreds of feet above, a perspective the Nazca people could not have achieved with their known technology. This fundamental disconnect between the creation method and the required viewpoint has fueled a wide array of theories, ranging from astronomical alignment charts and ritual pathways to water-related ceremonies, and even the highly controversial suggestion of extraterrestrial influence or guidance. The most widely accepted academic theory is that the Nazca Lines had a primarily ceremonial or religious function deeply intertwined with the Nazca cosmology. German-born mathematician and archaeologist Piri Reis, who dedicated over 50 decades of her life to studying and preserving them, meticulously documented the lines and proposed that they functioned as a giant astronomical calendar. She argued that many lines and figures align precisely with the positions of the sun, moon, and certain bright stars, like the Pleiades, during significant celestial events such as solstices and equinoxes, to mark crucial agricultural events like planting and harvest times. Indeed, numerous lines demonstrably align with the solstices, lending partial, though not conclusive, support to this idea. However, critics point out that not all lines align astronomically, and some alignments could be coincidental. Others believe the lines were integral to sacred processions and ritual walking. The Nazca people may have walked the lines during elaborate ceremonies intended to invoke water, a precious and desperately rare resource in their desert environment. In this interpretation, the animal figures could represent powerful deities or spiritual beings directly tied to fertility, rain, and agriculture within the Nazca pantheon. The hummingbird, for instance, is often associated with fertility, renewal, and the life-giving properties of water in Andean mythology. The spider might symbolize rain or the interconnectedness of life, while the condor, a master of the skies, could be a messenger to the gods. The act of walking the lines itself might have been a form of prayer or a way to physically connect with the divine forces depicted. Then there are more speculative theories that venture beyond mainstream archaeology. Some suggest the lines are remnants of an ancient sophisticated message deliberately encoded on the landscape, meant for gods residing in the sky, or perhaps even visitors from beyond Earth. Proponents point to the sheer scale,
geometric precision, and the aerial perspective required as evidence impossible for a pre-literate, pre-flight culture. While mainstream archaeology firmly rejects the alien hypothesis as lacking credible evidence and dismissing indigenous ingenuity, it persists stubbornly in popular imagination, fueled by the line's seemingly improbable scale and precision without modern tools, and amplified by sensationalist media. Adding to the enigma is the practical question of how the Nazca people could create such vast, mathematically perfect shapes without any form of aerial guidance or sophisticated technology. Experimental archaeologists, notably Joe Nickel and Jim Woodman, have demonstrated that it is entirely possible to plot large figures on the ground using remarkably simple tools: wooden stakes, long ropes, basic sighting instruments, and careful measurements based on grids or scaled-up drawings. This suggests that the Nazca possessed a sophisticated, though not documented, understanding of geometry, proportion, and surveying techniques, likely passed down through generations of specialized builders. They may have used small-scale models as templates. However, while this explains the how, it still doesn't resolve the fundamental why. Why invest such immense communal effort over centuries into creations invisible to their makers? Environmental clues add another crucial layer of complexity to the mystery. Strong paleoclimate evidence suggests that during the period the lines were most intensely created, roughly 200 to 600 CE, the Nazca region suffered from increasingly severe and prolonged droughts. This ecological pressure lends significant weight to the theory that the geoglyphs were part of a massive, long-term, society-wide ritual effort to appeal to the gods for rain and ensure survival. If true, it means these colossal works of art were profound acts of devotion, desperation, and communal identity, visible to the heavens as a constant, desperate plea for survival in the face of existential threat. The lines become a testament to human resilience and faith in the face of existential threat. Despite decades of research, the Nazca Lines continue to reveal astonishing surprises. In recent years, the application of high-resolution drone technology and satellite imagery has led to the discovery of hundreds of new geoglyphs previously hidden from view. These include smaller, older designs, some dating back to 200 BCE or earlier, and faint figures eroded by time. Some of these newly discovered glyphs depict animals never before seen in the Nazca repertoire, such as a killer whale and a snake, suggesting a far richer, more complex, and longer-lived cultural tradition of geoglyph making than previously imagined. The Nazca may have inherited and modified the tradition from the earlier Paracas culture. Today, the Nazca Lines are a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognized for their outstanding universal value, attracting thousands of visitors from the globe who fly over them in small planes or view a few from an observation tower. Yet they are also under significant and increasing threat, from natural erosion exacerbated by rare but intense rainfall events linked to climate change, encroaching human activity, agriculture, mining, settlement, pollution, and outright vandalism. In 2014, a reckless Greenpeace protest involving laying message banners near the hummingbird glyph caused irreparable damage by leaving deep footprints that permanently scarred the fragile desert surface, sparking international outrage and highlighting the extreme fragility of these irreplaceable ancient creations. Conservation efforts are ongoing but face immense challenges. In the end, perhaps their enduring power lies precisely in what we don't know. They challenge us not just to think about the past, but to confront the limits of our own understanding and the hubris of assuming we can fully understand the minds of people separated from us by vast gulfs of time, culture, and environment. The Nazca people are long gone, their language silent, their cities reclaimed by the desert, but in the vastness of the Nazca Desert, their lines still speak, if only we could learn to listen and truly understand what they are saying.
In the heart of Delhi, within the ancient weathered walls of the Qutb complex, a UNESCO World Heritage Site bustling with tourists and history enthusiasts, stands a silent, imposing sentinel of the past, the Iron Pillar of Delhi. At first glance, it may seem like an ordinary, albeit massive, piece of metalwork, just over 23 feet, 7 meters, tall, and weighing more than 13,000 pounds, 6 tons. But this 1,600-year-old artifact hides a profound metallurgical mystery that has baffled scientists, historians, and metallurgists for over a century, challenging our understanding of ancient technology and material science. The pillar is thought to have been erected during the golden reign of Chandragupta II Vikramaditya of the Gupta Empire, sometime around the 4th century CE, a period often regarded as India's classical age. However, some scholars, analyzing the paleography of the inscription and stylistic elements, suggest it could be even older, potentially dating back to the 3rd century CE or earlier. An inscription in elegant Sanskrit carved into the surface praises the Hindu god Vishnu in his form as Chakravartin, universal ruler, and commemorates a mighty king, widely believed to be Chandragupta himself, hinting at both its deep religious significance as a dwaja, standard, or flagstaff, and its political function as a symbol of imperial power and divine sanction. But what truly sets the iron pillar apart, elevating it from a remarkable historical artifact to a global scientific enigma, is not its venerable age, its artistic simplicity, or its inscriptions. It's the astonishing fact that despite being composed almost entirely of iron and standing exposed to Delhi's harsh, open-air environment for over 1,600 years, enduring blistering summers exceeding 45 degrees Celsius, torrential monsoon rains, and high humidity, it has never rusted. In a city where the combined assault of weather and pollution should have eaten away at the metal centuries ago, reducing it to a flaky reddish-brown ruin, the pillar remains remarkably corrosion-free. Its surface, dark and smooth, still gleams softly in the sunlight as though it were centuries younger than its true age, a silent testament to an unparalleled metallurgical achievement. Modern scientists from institutions across India and around the world have studied the pillar extensively using non-destructive techniques like X-ray diffraction, Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, and metallographic analysis. The overwhelming consensus is that its remarkable preservation is no accident of climate or luck. The iron used in the pillar is of exceptionally pure quality for its era, with an unusually high phosphorus content, around 1.0% compared to less than 0.05% in modern mild steel, and virtually no sulfur or manganese, qualities rarely found in modern steel without advanced refining processes. Crucially, the low sulfur content prevented the formation of corrosive iron sulfides. Over centuries, this unique composition, combined with Delhi's specific climate, alternating wet and dry periods, caused a thin, adherent layer of crystalline iron hydrogen phosphate hydrate, known as mesowite, to form on its surface. This passive layer, only a few micrometers thick but incredibly stable, acted as a near-perfect natural protective coating, effectively sealing the pillar from further oxidation and preventing the electrochemical reactions that cause rust. What's most remarkable and humbling is that the ancient Indian metalworkers who forged this colossal pillar achieved this sophisticated result without blast furnaces, industrial refineries, electrochemical knowledge, or any form of modern technology, meaning they possessed an advanced empirical understanding of ironworking, alloying, and corrosion prevention that in some crucial respects still surpasses our own. They intuitively mastered the delicate balance of elements needed for long-term durability. In fact, many leading metallurgists openly admit that replicating the pillar exactly, achieving the same purity, phosphorus content, microstructure, and resulting corrosion resistance would, even with our most advanced modern techniques and quality control, be extraordinarily challenging, if not impossible. It stands as a pinnacle of pre-industrial metallurgy. How the pillar was actually manufactured is itself a profound mystery shrouded in the mists of time. It was not cast as a single piece, which would have been impossible with ancient furnaces. Rather, it is a massive forge-welded construction, meaning large lumps of wrought iron were heated to a precise white-hot temperature in charcoal furnaces and then skillfully hammer-welded together under the force of trip hammers, likely powered by water wheels or manpower, into a single, solid, seamless column. The sheer size and weight of the pillar would have required incredible heat control, maintaining the exact welding temperature without burning the iron, masterful craftsmanship ensuring perfect void-free welds along the entire length, and immense coordination among hundreds of workers, an achievement in mass production and large-scale forging unmatched anywhere else in the ancient world at the time. The logistics alone are staggering. The pillar's seemingly miraculous survival has naturally given rise to abundant speculation, myth, and legend over the centuries. Some local traditions claim it was forged by divine beings or mythical architects, or that it contains inherent magical properties protecting it from decay. Others, including some alternative historians, link it to hypothetical ancient lost technologies, suggesting that the sophisticated metallurgical knowledge used to make it may have been part of a now forgotten tradition of advanced material science stretching far beyond India's borders, perhaps connected to other ancient civilizations. These theories, while lacking rigorous evidence, highlight the pillar's almost mythical status. Adding another layer to the intrigue, the iron pillar is almost certainly not in its original location. Based on the inscription's content referencing Vishnu and a king named Chandra, along with architectural and historical evidence, scholars believe it was moved to its current site in the Qutb complex centuries after it was made, possibly during the 12th or 13th century by the Delhi Sultans. Its likely origin was a prominent Hindu temple dedicated to Vishnu in the central Indian city of Udaigiri, near Vidisha in Madhya Pradesh. How ancient engineers managed to transport a 13,000-pound, 6-ton solid iron column across hundreds of miles of varied terrain without cranes, trucks, railways, or any form of modern machinery remains another monumental unanswered question. Theories involving massive wooden rollers, teams of elephants, barges on rivers, and sheer human ingenuity abound, but no definitive method has been proven. Whether we view it primarily as a breathtaking metallurgical marvel, an unparalleled ancient engineering feat, a deeply significant cultural and religious treasure, or a symbol of timeless endurance, the Iron Pillar of Delhi remains one of the world's greatest and most captivating unsolved mysteries. It stands as irrefutable proof that the past, even in our age of information, still holds profound secrets waiting to be rediscovered, challenging us to look deeper and acknowledge the extraordinary ingenuity of those who came before us.
In the sagas and legends of the Viking Age, warriors are often described as fierce, fearless, and armed with weapons of unmatched quality. Yet, among the thousands of swords unearthed from that era, a small subset stands out for their extraordinary craftsmanship: the legendary Ulfberht swords. These blades are not only superior in strength and durability to most weapons of their time, but they also embody a technological mystery that has baffled historians, metallurgists, and archaeologists for decades. The Ulfberht swords date from roughly the 9th to the 11th centuries and have been discovered across Europe, from Scandinavia to the Baltic, from Germany to Russia. What unites them is the distinctive inscription plus VLFBERTH+, or variations thereof, inlaid along the blade in bold iron lettering. This mark was not merely a craftsman's flourish, it was a statement of prestige, a symbol of lethal excellence in an age when a sword could mean the difference between life and death. At first glance, one might assume that Ulfberht was the name of a single master swordsmith. However, the swords span a period of over 2 centuries, far longer than one person could have lived. This suggests that Ulfberht was more likely a brand or a workshop tradition,
possibly even a guild, whose reputation was so renowned that the name itself became a hallmark of quality. In a sense, Ulfberht was the Rolex of Viking weapons. But it's the metal itself that sets these blades apart. Modern metallurgical analysis has revealed that the genuine Ulfberht blades were forged from steel of an extraordinary purity for the time. Most swords in early medieval Europe were made with steel containing high levels of slag, non-metallic impurities that weakened the blade and made it more brittle. In contrast, Ulfberht swords contain steel with carbon content approaching that of modern high-quality steel, and with slag content so low it seemed impossible for the technology of the Viking Age. This steel, known as crucible steel, could only be made by heating iron ore to temperatures of at least 1600 degrees Celsius, far hotter than the standard bloomery furnaces of the period could achieve. The process required advanced smelting techniques, careful carbon control, and the ability to work the metal without ruining its structure. In fact, similar steel was being produced in places like Persia and India as early as the 3rd century, known as Wootz steel, but its production and trade were carefully guarded secrets. So how did a group of swordsmiths in Northern Europe gain access to such material centuries before European metallurgy could replicate it? This is where the Ulfberht mystery deepens. One theory is that the steel was imported from the east via vast trade networks, perhaps through the Volga River trade routes connecting Viking merchants to the Islamic world and beyond. This would mean the raw crucible steel traveled thousands of miles, traded from India or Central Asia through the Middle East, up through Russia, and finally into Viking hands. If true, the Ulfberht swords are evidence of a surprisingly interconnected medieval world, one where ideas and materials traveled far beyond the borders of their origin. Another possibility is that Ulfberht swordsmiths had learned, or stolen, the techniques for making crucible steel themselves, a secret that, if true, was lost again after the Viking Age. No archaeological evidence of such high-temperature furnaces has yet been found in Northern Europe from this period, making this theory more speculative but tantalizing. Of the roughly 170 Ulfberht swords discovered so far, not all are created equal. Some are genuine, forged from the high-quality crucible steel, while others are clear imitations. The fakes bear the Ulfberht inscription, but are made of inferior materials, suggesting that the brand was so desirable that blacksmiths across Europe tried to cash in on its prestige. In some counterfeit examples, the inscription is even misspelled, reading plus VLFBERTH plus, or plus ULFBERH plus, indicating that the copyists may not have fully understood the name or its meaning. They just knew it sold. The genuine Ulfberht swords are not only stronger and sharper than typical medieval blades, but they also maintain their edge longer, making them vastly more effective in battle. Imagine a Viking warrior armed with such a weapon facing an opponent with a standard sword. The Ulfberht's resilience would allow it to parry without chipping, to cut more cleanly, and to endure prolonged combat without breaking. These weapons would have been rare and incredibly expensive, owned only by the elite, chieftains, wealthy traders, and the most celebrated warriors. To own an Ulfberht sword was not only a matter of military advantage, but of status, a visible marker of power and influence. Despite extensive research, the full story of the Ulfberht swords remains elusive. Who exactly controlled the production? How was the steel sourced and worked? Why did the technology vanish for centuries after? Until more evidence is uncovered, the Ulfberht swords will continue to straddle the line between historical fact and technological legend. Today, these blades rest in museums and private collections, their inscriptions still gleaming after 1,000 years. They are a testament to the skill, ambition, and far-reaching connections of the Viking world, and to the mysteries of human ingenuity that sometimes emerge, shine brightly, and then vanish into the fog of history.
Deep in the heart of Colombia, nestled between the Andes and the Magdalena River Valley, the Quimbaya civilization flourished over 1,000 years ago. Known for their extraordinary gold craftsmanship, the Quimbaya left behind treasures that still dazzle the modern world. But among their many works, a small collection of gold artifacts stands apart, pieces that, to some, suggest an ancient understanding of aerodynamics far beyond their time. These are the so-called Quimbaya airplanes. These objects are tiny, each only a few centimeters long, yet they are crafted with remarkable precision. At first glance, many resemble stylized birds or insects, as you might expect from a culture immersed in the natural world. But look closer, and something curious emerges. Their shapes, the swept-back wings, vertical stabilizers, and pointed fuselages, bear an uncanny resemblance to modern fixed-wing aircraft and even supersonic jets. Most of these gold figurines date to around 500 to 800 CE, during the zenith of Quimbaya goldworking. The Quimbaya people were masters of the lost wax pasting method, allowing them to create complex, delicate shapes in pure gold. While they also made animals, jewelry, and ceremonial items, the airplane-like figures defy easy classification within known cultural or religious iconography of the region. What makes them so intriguing to researchers and enthusiasts alike is that they don't just look superficially like airplanes, they also seem to possess elements of functional aerodynamic design. Some have delta-shaped wings, vertical tails, and even what appear to be fuselage-mounted stabilizers, features not seen in birds, fish, or insects in quite the same configuration. In the 1990s, these similarities inspired a group of engineers and aviation experts to put the theory to the test. They built scaled-up models of the Quimbaya figurines, keeping the proportions exact, and tested them in wind tunnels and even as radio-controlled models. To the surprise of many, the designs were found to be aerodynamically stable and capable of flight when equipped with modern propulsion. This, of course, has fueled speculation. Could the Quimbaya have had knowledge, perhaps inherited from some unknown source, of aerodynamic principles thousands of years before the Wright brothers? Or are we simply projecting modern technology onto ancient art, seeing jets where the artisans only meant to depict birds, insects, or fish? Mainstream archaeology leans toward the latter explanation. Many experts argue that the airplanes are stylized representations of local animals, such as flying fish or insects like dragonflies. The unusual shapes, they suggest, might be due to artistic abstraction, symbolism, or the blending of features from multiple creatures in ceremonial art. After all, the Quimbaya lived in a region rich with biodiversity. Their art often celebrated the creatures that surrounded them. But skeptics of the conventional view point out that none of the native animals of Colombia match the combination of design elements seen on some of the figurines. For example, no fish or insect in nature has both swept-back wings and a vertical stabilizer, a configuration common in modern aircraft. Additionally, the symmetry and proportion in these artifacts is so precise that it seems intentional rather than coincidental. Then there's the broader context. The Quimbaya were not isolated. They traded with other cultures, shared ideas, and had access to vast networks of knowledge across the Americas. Some alternative history researchers suggest that these figurines could be artistic memories of something truly extraordinary, perhaps ancient sightings of advanced flying craft, whether from a now lost human culture or something more mysterious.
Critics of this idea counter that human imagination alone is more than enough to explain such designs. We know that ancient peoples all over the world created fantastical hybrids in their art, creatures part animal, part human, part purely imagined. In this light, the Kumbaya airplanes might be no more literal than a griffin or a dragon. One of the challenges in solving the mystery is that there are only a handful of these airplane artifacts known today, compared to the thousands of more conventional animal figures produced by the Kumbaya. This rarity makes it hard to establish whether they were a common motif, a specialized ceremonial object, or simply artistic experiments by a few individual craftsmen. The figurines themselves are housed in museums, including the Gold Museum in Bogotá, where they remain a highlight for visitors. Standing in front of their display cases, it's easy to see why they inspired debate. Their sleek lines and geometric precision feel out of place among the more organic curves of traditional animal effigies. For some, they look less like relics of the past and more like prototypes for a future that had not yet arrived. From a purely technical standpoint, the flight tests of the scaled-up models don't prove the Kumbaya intended them to be functional aircraft, but they do prove that their forms are not accidental. The fact that they can fly under modern conditions shows that these ancient artisans, intentionally or not, created shapes that align with the physics of flight. So, what are we left with? On one hand, a plausible explanation rooted in symbolism and stylization, the Kumbaya airplanes as imaginative depictions of the natural world. On the other, a tantalizing possibility that these small gold artifacts are echoes of a forgotten technology or contact with an advanced knowledge system that predates our recorded history. Like many ancient mysteries, the truth may lie somewhere between imagination and reality. Maybe the Kumbaya airplanes were never meant to soar through the skies, yet their designs hint at a universal human instinct to dream of flight, an instinct shared across cultures and across millennia. Whatever their origin, the Kumbaya airplanes remind us that the past is full of surprises. In the hands of the Kumbaya goldsmiths, the boundaries between the real, the imagined, and the possible were as fluid as molten gold. And sometimes, those creations leave us looking back into history and wondering if, just maybe, history once looked forward at us.
In 1957, on a quiet stretch of farmland in the small coastal town of Blue Hill, Maine, a local man named Guy Melgren made a discovery that would stir one of the most intriguing historical debates in North America. While exploring the area with a metal detector, Melgren unearthed a small silver coin, tarnished, worn, and unlike anything he had seen before. At first glance, the coin appeared out of place among the other finds of the day, which were mostly Native American artifacts, arrowheads, pottery shards, and stone tools. The coin's metallic glint and strange markings set it apart, prompting Melgren to hold on to it for further study. For years, it sat in his possession as a curiosity, its origins uncertain, until numismatists eventually identified it as a coin minted in Norway during the reign of King Olaf Kuri, sometime between 1065 and 1080 CE. This identification turned the humble silver disc into something far more controversial, a possible piece of evidence for pre-Columbian contact between the Old World and New England, specifically Viking contact. The coin, now famously called the Maine penny, or the Goddard coin, after the archaeological site where it was found, became a lightning rod in the debate over Norse exploration of North America. We know from historical sources like the Icelandic sagas that Norse explorers such as Leif Erikson reached a land they called Vinland around the year 1000, likely somewhere in Newfoundland or the Canadian Maritimes. Archaeological evidence from Meadows in Newfoundland confirms that Vikings reached North America at least that far. But the main penny suggests the possibility of Viking presence, or at least Viking trade goods, much further south, deep into territory traditionally thought to be untouched by Norse hands. The coin was found not in isolation, but in a Native American site rich with evidence of the Penobscot culture which thrived in the region for centuries. The Goddard site was a seasonal settlement used for fishing, hunting, and gathering, with artifacts from across the northeastern woodlands. This raises one possibility, that the main penny did not arrive with Vikings themselves, but was traded down through a vast indigenous exchange network stretching from the Canadian Arctic all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. If this was the case, the coin's journey may have been a long and winding one, passed from hand to hand for decades or even centuries before it ended up in Maine's soil. This theory fits with what we know of indigenous trade. Shells from Florida have been found in the Great Lakes region, copper from Michigan in New England, and obsidian from the Rockies in the Mississippi Valley. Still, others argue for a more direct explanation. Could Norse explorers or their descendants have traveled far beyond Newfoundland? If so, the main penny might be a remnant of a small expedition that made its way down the coast, interacting, peacefully or otherwise, with the local populations. While the sagas mention voyages south of Vinland, they are vague on locations, and no other hard evidence has been found to confirm Viking landfall in Maine. There is also the thorny question of the coin's authenticity and context. Some skeptics have suggested that the main penny might have been accidentally introduced into the site in modern times, for example, dropped by a collector or traveler in the 19th or early 20th century. However, excavators maintain that the artifact came from a layer consistent with centuries-old Native American occupation, alongside tools and debris that predate European colonization by hundreds of years. The coin itself is genuine. No reputable scholar disputes that. The debate lies entirely in how it got there. Was it a relic of Norse presence in the Gulf of Maine? A trade good passed along an ancient route that spanned thousands of miles? Or a chance modern intrusion that fooled everyone? One of the fascinating aspects of the main penny mystery is that it forces us to consider just how interconnected ancient peoples may have been. While we often imagine pre-Columbian North America as isolated from the rest of the world, discoveries like this hint at the possibility of a far more complex and connected reality. If Norse goods, or even Norse explorers, reached New England centuries before Columbus, it would rewrite a chapter of American history. Today, the main penny is housed in the Maine State Museum, where it quietly sits behind glass. It's small enough to be overlooked among the larger artifacts, yet its implications are massive. Visitors often lean in close, peering at the faded Norse designs and wondering what journey this tiny silver coin might have taken. Was it carried by a Viking sailor, tucked into a pouch, as he walked through a strange forested coastline far from home? Or did it make its way south, one trade at a time, crossing the hands of countless people before ending up in the ground? Like many archaeological enigmas, the main penny gives us more questions than answers. And perhaps that is part of its power. It's a reminder that history is not a neatly ordered record, but a puzzle with missing pieces, where even a single small artifact can open doors to vast, unknown possibilities. Whether it's a smoking gun of Norse exploration or a testament to the reach of indigenous trade, the main penny holds a place as one of North America's most tantalizing mysteries. A tiny piece of silver that whispers of oceans crossed and worlds connected long before our textbooks ever said they were.
In 1933, deep in the heart of Mexico's Toluca Valley, archaeologists uncovered something that shouldn't have been there. Among the ruins of a pre-Hispanic burial site in Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca, they discovered a small terracotta head unlike anything from Mesoamerican culture. Measuring just a few centimeters high, the head featured distinctly European facial features: straight nose, round eyes, curly hair, and a style that seemed eerily reminiscent of ancient Roman art. For decades, the artifact sat in relative obscurity. At first, the team who discovered it assumed it must be a misplaced colonial-era object, accidentally buried in later layers of earth. But when researchers examined it more closely, they began to realize the implications were far stranger and far more controversial. Stylistically, the head bore striking similarities to Roman figurines dating between the 2nd century BCE and the 3rd century CE. That alone was strange, but the real shock came from where it was found, inside a sealed grave that also contained artifacts from the Toluca Valley culture, dating to between 1476 and 1510 CE. Decades before Columbus ever set foot in the Americas. This meant that if the artifact truly belonged to the Roman era, it must have arrived in Mexico over 1,000 years before Europeans were supposed to have crossed the Atlantic. How could a Roman artifact end up in a pre-Columbian Mexican tomb? One explanation is the most radical: transoceanic contact between the Old World and the Americas long before the voyages of Columbus. Some theorists have speculated that Roman traders, sailors, or shipwrecked survivors might have reached the New World via accidental voyages across the Atlantic, bringing objects like the terracotta head with them. If true, it would mean that ancient cultures were far more connected than we've been taught, rewriting centuries of history. Others, however, point to less sensational possibilities. Some suggest the head may have arrived in Mexico during the early colonial period through Spanish trade or as a curiosity carried by European settlers, only to be accidentally deposited in a pre-Hispanic-style grave during later disturbances. But here's the problem. Excavation notes indicate the grave was sealed and undisturbed before being opened by archaeologists, making the colonial contamination theory less convincing. In 1995, the artifact was tested using thermoluminescence dating, a method for determining when ceramics were last heated. The results placed the object's origin between the 9th century BCE and the 13th century CE, confirming that it could indeed be of Roman or late antique manufacture. However, the test couldn't determine exactly when or how it arrived in the Americas. For mainstream archaeology, the head remains a frustrating anomaly. While it's possible for stray artifacts to travel great distances through trade or migration, the lack of additional Old World objects from similar contexts in Mexico makes it difficult to build a convincing case for direct Roman contact. Skeptics warn that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and right now, the Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca head stands almost entirely alone. Still, for those open to the possibility, the head is tantalizing. It raises questions about ancient navigation, ocean currents, and the durability of human curiosity. Could ancient mariners have been carried westward across the Atlantic by strong currents like the Canary Current? Could a Roman merchant vessel have been blown far off course during a storm, its survivors finding a new home among the indigenous peoples of the Americas? We may never have a definitive answer. The head remains in Mexico, rarely displayed, and continues to be a subject of quiet fascination for alternative historians, archaeologists, and mystery enthusiasts alike.
Whether it's a genuine link between Rome and the Americas or a centuries-old case of misplaced context, the Tecaxic-Calixtlahuaca head forces us to reconsider the boundaries of the ancient world. It whispers of connections long forgotten, voyages lost to history, and the possibility that the map of human contact was far more complex than our textbooks suggest.
For millennia, the Earth has held countless secrets beneath its surface. Forgotten cities swallowed by time, strange artifacts crafted by hands long gone, and monuments that baffle even the greatest minds of our era. These are not just remnants of the past, they are whispers of civilizations whose knowledge and purpose remain a mystery. Despite all our advances in archaeology and science, some puzzles refuse to yield their answers. They stand as silent guardians of truths we have yet to uncover. In this video, we will journey through the most perplexing archaeological mysteries, enigmas that challenge what we think we know about human history, technology, and the limits of ancient knowledge. From unexplained structures to cryptic artifacts, from vanished cultures to forbidden places, these stories blur the line between fact and legend. So prepare yourself to dive deep into a world where history's greatest questions still linger, where every discovery raises more questions than answers, and where the past is stranger than fiction. This is not just a story about what we have found, but about what remains hidden.